Hi, I'm Soph. I'm 28 and doing well in my marketing job, and I'm married to Jhony, a great guy who's 30 and a successful software engineer. We were living our dream, or so I thought. When we first got married, I wanted to be the perfect daughter-in-law. Jhony's parents, Linda and Robert, seemed nice at first. I brought homemade pies to family dinners, helped with the dishes, and listened to Linda's long stories about her book club. But then, Linda would correct me on little things, like how to fold napkins. "Oh, Soph dear," she'd say, "that's not how we do it here." I would just smile and nod, trying to ignore it. Jhony said, "That's just how Mom is. Don't take it personally." But it wasn't just the napkins. Linda had an opinion on everything: our jobs, our home, even how often we visited. One day, I told my best friend Sarah about it. "They sound like a nightmare," she said. "How does Jhony not see this?" I sighed and explained that he thought I was overreacting. Sarah said, "You need to set some boundaries." Every time I tried to talk to Jhony, he would defend his mom. "They're just trying to help," he'd say. Then came Thanksgiving. Linda called to say she would host dinner this year. "I know you offered, Soph, but you're still learning how to entertain," she said sweetly. I bit my tongue and agreed. She added, "Oh, and bring a homemade pumpkin pie, no store-bought. And please come early to help set up." I hung up, feeling angry. Jhony walked in and asked what was wrong. I hesitated but finally said, "It's just Linda's demands and constant criticism. I feel like nothing I do is good enough." Jhony sighed. "She's just old-fashioned, Soph. It's her way of caring." I couldn't believe it. "Caring? She makes me feel terrible half the time." "Let's not fight about this. It's just one dinner. We'll get through it, okay?" Jhony said. I nodded, but inside, I was dreading Thanksgiving. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to be family can be the most toxic. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and Jhony and I drove to his parents' house. I held the homemade pumpkin pie, hoping it would meet Linda's high expectations. "Ready?" Jhony asked, squeezing my hand. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said, forcing a smile. We walked in, and Linda immediately spotted the pie. "Oh, Soph, you actually made it yourself? How quaint." I bit my tongue and went to the kitchen to help. During dinner, the tension was thick. Linda took a bite of my pie and made a face. "Well, it's interesting. Maybe next time you could try using a proper recipe." That was it. I'd had enough. "Linda, I followed your recipe exactly. If you don't like it, just say so instead of making these passive-aggressive comments." The table went silent. Linda's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? I'm only trying to help you improve. You clearly need it." "Help me? You've done nothing but criticize and put me down since I married Jhony." Linda gasped dramatically. "How dare you, Robert? Are you hearing this?" Robert jumped in. "Now, Soph, that's no way to speak to your mother-in-law. Apologize, right now." I looked at Jhony, hoping he'd back me up, but he just stared at his plate. My voice shaking, I said, "I will not apologize for standing up for myself." Linda stood up and pointed at the door. "Get out, both of you. I won't tolerate such disrespect in my house." Finally, Jhony spoke. "Mom, come on, this is ridiculous. Don't you dare take her side." "Jhony," Linda yelled, "choose right now, us or her." Jhony looked at me, then at his parents. He stood up and took my hand. "Let's go, Soph." We drove in silence to a nearby hotel. Once we were in our room, the reality of what happened hit me, and I started crying. Jhony held me and said, "I'm so sorry, Soph. I should have stood up to them sooner." "Why didn't you?" I asked between sobs. Jhony sighed. "I guess I was in denial about how bad things had gotten. I kept hoping if we just tried harder." "Jhony, we shouldn't have to try harder. They're the problem, not us." We spent the night talking, really talking for the first time in months, about his parents, our marriage, and everything in between. "We need to set some serious boundaries," I said. "I can't keep living like this." Jhony nodded. "You're right. No more excuses. From now on, we're a team. My parents will either respect that, or they'll have to deal with the consequences." As we lay in that hotel room, I felt both sad and relieved. Sad that it had come to this, but relieved that Jhony finally understood. "What do we do now?" I asked. Jhony pulled me closer. "We start over. We'll build our own traditions, and maybe my parents will come around, but if they don't, we'll be okay." I nodded, feeling stronger than I had in months. This Thanksgiving had been a disaster, but it was also a turning point. No more pretending everything was perfect. Jhony and I decided we had enough. We cut ties with his parents and focused on rebuilding our lives, free from their toxic influence. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. We found a cute little apartment across town, far from his parents' neighborhood. We spent weekends painting and decorating, making it truly our own. No Linda criticizing our color choices, no Robert making rude comments about our furniture. It felt like we could finally breathe. Work became my escape. I threw myself into my projects, and it paid off. One day, my boss called me into her office. "Soph, your performance has been outstanding. We'd like to offer you a promotion to senior marketing manager." I was over the moon. When I told Jhony, he picked me up and spun me around the living room. "I'm so proud of you, Soph," he said, smiling from ear to ear. Jhony was doing great too. He started a side project, developing an app for local businesses, and it really took off. "Babe, I just got another client," he'd shout, and we'd do our silly victory dance in the kitchen. Our relationship grew stronger, we talked more, laughed more, and it finally felt like we were a team, facing the world together. Then, about 6 months after Thanksgiving, everything changed. Jhony got a call from his mom. "What do you mean, gambling addiction?" he asked, his face going pale. I could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was enough to know something was wrong. Apparently, Robert had a secret gambling problem, and it had gotten out of control. They were about to lose their house. When Jhony hung up, he looked shocked. They lost everything. Soph, the house, their savings, everything. I felt a mix of emotions, shock, a little bit of satisfaction, I'm only human, and dread, because I knew what was coming. Sure enough, the next day, Linda called Jhony. He put it on speaker. "Jhony, darling," she said sweetly, "your father and I are in a bit of trouble. We were wondering if we could stay with you and Soph for a while, just until we get back on our feet. Rent-free. Of course, you wouldn't charge your own parents, would you?" Jhony looked at me, clearly torn. I don't know, Mom, we'd have to talk about it." After he hung up, Jhony turned to me. "Soph, I know things have been bad, but they're still my parents. Maybe if we help them, they'll realize how wrong they were. Maybe we can fix things." I took a deep breath. "Jhony, honey, I know you want to help, but think about everything they put us through, the criticism, the manipulation, kicking us out on Thanksgiving, and now they want to move in, rent-free?" "But they're family," he said softly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way they treated us," I replied. "If we let them move in, we'll be right back where we started. All the progress we've made, all the peace we've found, it'll be gone." Jhony was quiet for a long time, then he nodded slowly. "You're right, God, you're right. I can't believe I even thought about it. It's just, they're my parents, you know?" I hugged him tightly. "I know, babe, and it's awful that they've put you in this position, but we need to protect ourselves, our relationship, and the life we've built. You're right, no more toxic influences. We've come too far to go back now." As we stood in our little apartment, I felt both relieved and sad. Relieved that we were sticking to our boundaries, but sad that it had come to this. Still, I knew we were making the right choice. Sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that help us grow the most. Jhony made the call to his parents and put it on speaker. "Mom, Dad, we've talked it over, and we can't let you move in with us," he said. Linda's voice immediately became sharp. "What? How could you do this to us? We're your parents." "I'm sorry, but it's just not possible," Jhony replied firmly. "This is all Soph's doing, isn't it?" Linda snapped. "She's turned you against us." I couldn't stay silent any longer. "Linda, this was our decision. Your behavior has consequences." "How dare you?" she screamed. "After everything we've done for you." "You mean like kicking us out on Thanksgiving?" I shot back. The call ended with Linda threatening to tell the whole family how awful we were, but we were done being manipulated. We decided to host a housewarming party, inviting extended family and friends. It was time to set the record straight. During the party, Jhony's cousin, Amy, approached me. "Hey, Soph, is it true you refused to help Linda and Robert because you're jealous of their relationship?" I was stunned. "What? No, absolutely not. Where did you hear that?" Amy looked uncomfortable. "Linda's been telling everyone that you're trying to come between them and Jhony." That was the last straw. I gathered everyone's attention. "I need to clear something up," I said. "Linda and Robert have been spreading lies about us. I told them everything, the constant criticism, the Thanksgiving disaster, the manipulation." Jhony chimed in, explaining more about his dad's gambling addiction. The room fell silent. Then, Jhony-san spoke up. I always thought Linda exaggerated about you, Soph. I'm so sorry we believed her. As the party continued, more family members came up to us, apologizing and sharing their own stories of Linda's manipulation. A week later, we got a call from Jhony's cousin. You won't believe this, she said. Linda and Robert are being evicted. Turns out Robert owes money to some shady people, and they might even face legal trouble. Jhony sighed. Part of me feels guilty, he said. I squeezed his hand. We can't set ourselves on fire to keep them warm. They made their choices. That evening, we reaffirmed our commitment to each other and the boundaries we had set. No more toxic influences. No more manipulation. Meanwhile, Jhony and I were thriving. My career was taking off, and Jhony's app business was booming. We even started talking about having kids. One night, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Jhony turned to me and said, You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for that Thanksgiving disaster. It opened my eyes. It was hard, but look at us now. We're stronger because of it. No more pretending everything's perfect. Just us, building our life on our terms. As the sun set and the sky darkened, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our story wasn't about revenge, it was about standing up for ourselves, setting boundaries, and choosing happiness. Sometimes, the best way to move forward is simply by living well. Now that our story is over, I have a question for you. Was I wrong to refuse to help my in-laws, even after everything they put us through, despite their serious financial troubles? Where do you draw the line between family loyalty and taking care of yourself? Should we always help family, no matter how toxic they've been? Or is it okay to protect our own mental health and happiness? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in this situation? If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything to me and helps me keep sharing real-life experiences. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.
Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months, my mother shouted, her voice loud through the hospital room speaker. I sat there, shocked, holding my phone with shaking hands. It was Christmas Eve at Los Angeles Medical Center. My 2-year-old twins, John and Jennifer, were playing quietly in the corner, while a kind nurse named Linda was checking my vitals. The pain in my stomach was unbearable, like someone was twisting a knife inside me. But what hurt even more was seeing how little my mom cared during the video call. My name is Patricia Heaton. I'm 35 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been treated like an outsider in my own family. My younger sister Mary is the favorite. She can do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I couldn't even get them to look after their only grandkids while I faced emergency surgery. The doctors found internal bleeding that needed immediate surgery. I had no one else to call. But all my parents cared about was going to their concert and spending Christmas Eve with Mary. When I finally begged them for help after trying every other option, my dad said something I'll never forget. You're becoming a real problem, Patricia. We're retired now. We deserve to enjoy life without dealing with your mess. That broke me more than any surgery ever could. I've been helping my parents with money ever since they retired early 4 years ago. Every single month, I sent them $3,000 to help with their bills. Even after my husband David died 7 months ago, I kept doing it because I believed that's what family does. Now I realize how wrong I was. As tears rolled down my cheeks and onto the hospital blanket, Linda gently touched my shoulder and said, My friend Laura is a professional nanny. She works with kids who've been through tough times. Let me give her a call for you. She showed me kindness, the total opposite of how cold my parents had been. My twins were still too young to understand what was going on. They had already lost their dad in a car accident, and now, if something went wrong with my surgery, they could lose me too. That thought terrified me. But even scarier was the idea of leaving them with people who didn't truly care about them. People who saw them as a problem. With pain shooting through my body and my heart full of disappointment, I made up my mind. Yes, please call her, I told Linda. And with that, I took the first step toward letting go of the toxic people who raised me but never truly loved me. After I ended the call, old memories came flooding back. My childhood was full of moments where I was ignored, while Mary always got the praise. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely said anything because Mary had been in a local commercial that weekend. When I married David, They complained the wedding location was too far. Even when the twins were born, they only visited once and said the babies were too loud. David was my biggest support. He knew what it felt like to be let down by family. He hadn't spoken to his own father in years. "We'll make our own family," he used to say. "A family that knows how to love." And we did. We built a warm home full of laughter, love, and kindness. But 7 months ago, a drunk driver took him away. Since then, I've been raising our kids alone, struggling with depression and grief. Even after everything, I kept helping my parents. I even gave them more money when they said inflation was making things hard. I wanted to be better than them. I wanted to show that families should stick together. But the truth hit me hard. Here I was, possibly dying, and they couldn't even skip one concert to help watch my kids. Linda came back and told me her friend Laura would be there within an hour. "She's amazing with children," Linda said. "She used to work with kids dealing with trauma at the children's hospital. Now she's a private nanny." I nodded, then asked, "How much will this cost?" I was worried. David's insurance didn't cover everything, and the medical bills were already piling up. "Don't worry about that right now," Linda said gently. "Let's just get you ready for surgery." But I couldn't stop worrying. I thought about the $3,000 I was supposed to send my parents next week. That money could be used to care for my children instead. That thought lit a small spark inside me, something I hadn't felt in years. A sense of strength and the need to protect myself. When Laura arrived, she was just like Linda said, kind, calm, and instantly great with the twins. As the hospital staff got me ready for surgery, I finally felt a little less afraid. I made up my mind. "Can you please bring me my phone one more time?" I asked Linda with shaky hands. I sent 3 messages. The first one was to my bank. I asked them to stop all future automatic money transfers to my parents' account. The third message was to my parents. "I will no longer be sending you money. My children and I deserve better than being treated like we don't matter. Please don't contact me again." As they rolled my bed toward the surgery room, I felt something I didn't expect: freedom. Even with all the pain and fear, I felt like a heavy weight had been lifted. The surgery went well, but it left me weaker than the doctors expected. I stayed in the hospital for 6 days, going in and out of sleep. Through it all, I was so thankful for Laura. She stayed with the twins during the day in my hospital room and took them home to my apartment at night. One day, when I was more awake, I saw my phone flashing. I had 35 missed calls and lots of messages from my parents and Mary. Most of the messages were what I expected. First, they were confused, then angry. Then came the desperate messages about needing money for their mortgage. Not one of them asked how my surgery went. Not once did they ask if the twins were okay. The last message from my dad said a lot. "You can't just stop sending money like this. We booked a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable." Mary's messages were different. She sounded confused. "Mom and Dad just told me you were having a small procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" That's when I realized my parents had lied to Mary. They told her I was just going for a simple checkup so they could justify going to the concert instead of helping me or their grandchildren. I decided to tell her everything. Even though I was still feeling weak from the medicine, I wrote out the full story and sent it to her. Her reply came quickly. "Oh my God, Patricia. I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic. I would have taken care of the twins if I had known. I'm so sorry." I believed her. Mary wasn't mean. She was just raised in a house where she was always told that her needs mattered more than anyone else's. Maybe now, she would finally see our parents for who they really were. By the time I left the hospital, I had made a few clear decisions. First, I hired Laura to work part-time and help me take care of the twins while I recovered. I contacted a lawyer to help me make a will. I chose a trusted friend to be the twins' guardian in case something ever happened to me. I knew I didn't want my parents to have that role. Next, I blocked my parents' phone numbers. I only kept limited contact with Mary while I figured out if she was being honest with me. Stopping the $3,000 I used to send my parents every month had a big impact. That money was almost 1/3 of what I earned as a graphic designer. Without that extra burden, I could finally afford proper childcare. I also hoped to start saving again, especially since I had used up most of my emergency fund after David passed away. That night, lying in my own bed with the twins sleeping in their room across the hall, I felt a mix of emotions. I felt guilty, like I had done something wrong for putting my children and myself first. I felt scared, too. I was still healing, and taking care of 2 toddlers on my own wasn't easy. But for the first time, I also felt a new kind of strength, self-respect. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Mary. I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. 3 weeks after surgery, I was slowly getting better. The spot where they made the cut still hurt when I moved too quickly, but each day I felt stronger. Laura had been a lifesaver. She showed up every morning to help with the twins while I worked from home. My graphic design clients were very kind and understanding about my limited work hours. I was thankful I could still earn money while staying close to my kids. Mary visited me twice during that time. She brought healthy food and spent time with the twins. At first, we were careful with our words, but over time, she started opening up. One evening, while watching the twins play, she admitted something. They always made it seem like you were the one pulling away from the family, she said quietly. I didn't realize they were the ones pushing you out. I started to see a different side of my sister, someone who had also been fooled by our parents for years. I wasn't ready to fully trust her yet, but I appreciated that she was trying. Then came a knock at the door, the one I had a feeling would come eventually. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents standing outside. My mom held her fancy purse and looked nervous. My dad stood there with his arms crossed, wearing the same impatient look I knew so well. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I opened the door just a little, enough to speak through the small gap. What do you want? I asked, my voice steady. I expected this, I thought as I opened the door. Patricia, darling, we've been so worried, my mom said in a sweet voice that instantly made me put my guard up. You haven't been answering our calls. We just wanted to make sure you and the twins were okay. We're fine, I replied, keeping my voice flat. If that's all. It's not, my dad cut in, leaning slightly against the door. We need to talk about this money problem. The bank called us about the mortgage, and we had to use our cruise savings to pay it. I was shocked. Not a single question about how I was doing after surgery. No concern about the twins. Just complaints about money. I told you, I'm not sending any more money, I said firmly. And I meant it. But sweetie, my mom said, her voice going higher, we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I made changes in our life because we thought you'd always help us. My commitment, I said, feeling disbelief. I sent you money because I felt guilty, not because you earned it. You couldn't even take care of your grandkids while I was having emergency surgery. My dad's face turned serious. That's not fair, Patricia. We had plans. Plans that were more important than your grandchildren's safety? More important than my life. I said, my voice getting louder. The doctor told me there was a chance I wouldn't survive that surgery. Did either of you ever ask how I was doing? They said nothing. That silence said everything. We made one mistake, my mom whispered, sounding dramatic. Are you really going to punish us for it? This isn't punishment, Mom. This is the result of your choices, I said, feeling strangely calm. My whole life, I've tried to earn your love and support. And when I needed you the most, you chose Elton John tickets over your daughter and her kids. We're your parents, my dad said, trying to sound like he was in charge. And I'm a parent too, I said right back. And I would never treat John and Jennifer the way you've treated me. Never. Just then, little Jennifer came walking into view, holding her stuffed giraffe. My mom quickly changed her tone. There's my sweet grandbaby, she cooed, bending down. Grandma brought you some presents. But Jennifer, unsure about these people she barely knew, took a step back. She looked at me with confusion in her eyes. I think you should leave, I said quietly. If I ever feel ready to talk, I'll reach out. But the money, my dad started to say. That's not your concern anymore, I said, gently closing the door. The next morning, my parents came back, but this time they brought someone with them. My Aunt Rebecca, my mom's sister. She had always tried to act like the family peacemaker. "Patricia, honey, be reasonable," Aunt Rebecca said from outside the door, which I still hadn't opened. "Your parents are struggling without your help. They handled their money just fine for years before I started helping," I answered through the door. "They chose to retire early, even though they knew their savings wouldn't be enough." Then my mom's voice broke in. "We made those choices because you promised to help us. Now we had to cancel our cruise, and we might even lose our house." But now I saw through it. Their guilt trips didn't work on me anymore. For years, they made me feel responsible. But when had I ever promised to support them forever? I had only offered to help for a while after they retired. Somehow, they turned that into a lifetime promise. "Mom, Dad, I just had major surgery. I'm also taking care of 2 small kids," I said firmly. "This conversation is over." I walked away, ignoring their knocking and begging. Later that day, I got an email from my dad. It was sent to the whole extended family. In it, he claimed that I had abandoned them when they needed me the most, even after they had sacrificed everything for me. Of course, he didn't mention that they refused to help me during my emergency surgery or care for their grandchildren. Instead, he made me look like a selfish daughter who had stopped helping them without warning. But things didn't go as they planned. My cousin Timothy, who lives close to my parents, replied to the email thread. "Uncle Nicholas, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Michelle, wasn't that a new diamond bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other family members started replying too. Many of them messaged me privately to ask what really happened. Even Aunt Rebecca called me. "I had no idea about your surgery," she said. "They told me you were being dramatic about a regular checkup and using it as an excuse to stop helping them." Meanwhile, Mary had fully taken my side. After seeing how our parents really behaved, Mary helped me write a short and honest reply to the family email. It said, "I recently had emergency surgery that came with serious risks. My parents refused to watch my kids during that time because they had concert tickets. I'm now focusing on healing and taking care of my twins without extra stress." The support that came afterward surprised me. Timothy's wife dropped off warm, home-cooked meals. A second cousin I hardly knew offered to help babysit the twins for free. Mary started spending weekends at my apartment, getting to know her niece and nephew, and helping me recover. The biggest surprise came from Linda, the nurse at the hospital. She connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. Their first meeting was on Zoom, so I could join from home. For the first time since David died, I felt like I was surrounded by people who truly understood what I was going through. They had been through similar pain, and it made me feel less alone. Meanwhile, my parents' money problems got worse. They had been living a lifestyle they couldn't afford, depending on my monthly payments to keep things going, fancy trips, expensive things, and more. Mary later found out they had taken a second loan on their house last year to buy a boat. They assumed I'd keep paying their regular mortgage forever. "They've been lying to everyone," Mary told me after going through their finances. "They're not broke. They've just spent too much. They'd be okay if they sold the boat and the vacation timeshare." My parents kept sending me messages and leaving voicemails, sounding more and more desperate. But I didn't feel guilty anymore. Their control over me was fading. I was finally building something real, a support system made up of people who cared about me, not people who only wanted something from me. Then, 1 month after my surgery, something big happened. Mary called me. Her voice was filled with both concern and frustration. "They just got a foreclosure notice," she said. "They're totally panicking. The bank gave them 70 days to catch up on payments, or they'll lose the house." "What about their retirement savings?" I asked the question while gently bouncing Jennifer on my knee. John was napping nearby. Mary let out a sigh. "Their savings are almost gone. They spent a big chunk on the boat. Then Dad invested the rest into some plan his golf friend told him about. They lost nearly everything." "I'm not saying you should help them, Patricia," she added. "I just thought you should know." That evening, I got more desperate messages from both of my parents. They weren't even pretending to care about me anymore. They were just begging for money. My mom's text stood out the most. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We figured you were just upset and would start sending money again after a week or two." That message made me angry. They truly believed I had no real limits. All those years of putting them first, of letting them treat me poorly, they had never respected me. But while their world was falling apart, mine was slowly improving in ways I never imagined. The support group had become something I deeply depended on. Through it, I met other parents who understood my pain and struggles. That's how I met Michelle, a real estate agent whose husband died from cancer 3 years ago. She had a 3-year-old son. Michelle gave me ideas I hadn't thought about, like selling my too small apartment and using the money to move to a better, more affordable area with good childcare options. At the same time, I had started a small side business. I was making memorial websites, inspired by the one I created for David. A few people from the support group hired me to make theirs, and word started to spread. For the first time since David passed, I felt like I had a real purpose again, something more than just getting by. The difference between my progress and my parents' downfall became even clearer when they suddenly showed up at my apartment again. This time, they brought a printed spreadsheet listing all their debts. "We need $150,000 to catch up on the mortgage and stop the bank from taking the house," my dad said. His usual confident voice now sounded desperate. I let them inside, not because I felt guilty, but because I was curious to hear what they had to say now that they were finally facing the results of their choices. "What about selling the boat?" I asked, pointing toward the dining table, so they could sit down. "We'd lose money on it," my dad said, sounding frustrated. "And the timeshare?" I asked. "We've tried," my mom said quickly, "but the market's really bad. And anyway, those are our retirement comforts." I almost laughed at how ridiculous it sounded. "Luxuries you can't afford," I said. "We could afford them, with your help," my father snapped. "It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you." I looked at him and asked quietly, "What exactly have you done for me?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Just then, the twins walked into the room. John was holding his favorite toy truck, and Jennifer was happily babbling. My parents' faces softened right away. "There are our sweet babies," my mom said, reaching out for Jennifer. Jennifer quickly moved behind my legs, hiding. "They don't know you," I said calmly. "You've seen them what 4 times total? You chose not to be part of their lives." "That's not fair," my dad argued. "We're busy people." "Too busy for your only grandchildren? Too busy to help your daughter during emergency surgery? But not too busy to keep asking for money," I said, my voice steady. "I think that shows what really matters to you." My mom's face dropped. Whether it was real sadness or just another way to get sympathy, I couldn't tell anymore. "If you don't help, we'll lose everything," she whispered. "I lost my husband," I replied calmly. "And my children lost their father. We made it through. So will you." For months after my surgery, my parents finally had to face the truth. They sold their house to avoid losing it. Mary kept me informed, but I stayed distant. They ended up in a much smaller condo, nowhere near their old 5,000 square foot lakefront home. My dad sold his boat for less than it was worth. They also got rid of the timeshare, losing money on that too. "They're still blaming you for all of it," Mary told me during one of her weekly visits. "They keep saying you promised to support them forever, and then just walked away." "Let them say whatever they want," I replied, feeling surprisingly calm. The truth speaks for itself. And it really did. Most of our extended family had taken my side after learning the full story. Even my dad's sister, who had always defended him, called to say she was shocked they refused to help me during surgery. Meanwhile, my own life had changed in the best ways. Michelle from my support group helped me buy a small 2-bedroom house in a nice, family-friendly neighborhood. The mortgage was actually cheaper than what I used to pay for rent. For the first time, the twins had a backyard to run and play in. And my side business, making memorial websites, was growing fast. I was able to cut back on some of my graphic design work and focus more on projects that felt meaningful to me. Laura still helped with childcare 4 days a week, but I changed my schedule so I could spend more time with John and Jennifer. The best part was that I had found a real community. When we moved into our new home, neighbors brought casseroles. The support group arranged playdates for the kids. Mary and I had grown close. She now felt like a real sister, not just someone I used to compete with for our parents' attention. Even Linda, the nurse from the hospital, visited sometimes with her own kids. I had lost my husband and cut off contact with my parents, yet somehow I felt less alone than ever before. 7 months after my surgery, I received a letter, an actual handwritten letter from my mother. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was something I had never seen from her before, a real apology. "I've had time to think about my actions," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without our help made me face some hard truths about myself as a mother. I was jealous of your strength and independence. I was upset that you didn't need me the way I needed my own mother. But now I understand. You did need me, just not in the way I expected. When you asked us to watch the twins during your surgery, you were reaching out, and we failed you. I'm truly sorry." She went on to explain how they had changed their lifestyle. My dad had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They had sold most of their expensive things and were now living simply for the first time in years. She didn't ask me for money. She didn't even ask for forgiveness, only that I accept her apology. I showed the letter to Mary, who didn't fully trust it. "They've been talking about writing to you for weeks," she told me. "Dad didn't want to at first. But after his health scare last month, I think he's starting to see things differently." "Health scare?" I asked, feeling concerned, even though I tried not to be. "Just high blood pressure and chest pain," Mary said. "But it scared him. He's on medication now, and actually listening to the doctor for once. I think realizing how fragile life is has made him think." I wasn't ready to write back right away. I needed time to understand my own feelings. Was the letter real, or just another way to pull me back in? Had they truly changed, or were they just using a new approach? That night, I looked at old family photos for the first time since cutting ties. Behind the smiling faces, I saw things I hadn't noticed before. My parents had always acted like perfect parents, but in truth, they mostly put themselves first. 1 year after my surgery, I finally agreed to meet my parents. We chose a quiet cafe near my new home, a neutral place where I could feel safe and in control. When they walked in, I hardly recognized them. My dad looked different. He didn't stand tall and proud like he used to. He looked smaller, quieter. My mom wasn't dressed in her usual expensive clothes. Instead, she wore simple, practical clothes. The twins were spending the afternoon with Mary. I wasn't ready to bring them into this yet. We sat together in silence for a while. It was uncomfortable. Then, something surprising happened. My father started to cry. "I've been a terrible father," he said, his voice shaking. "And an even worse grandfather. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know I finally understand how selfish we've been." My mom reached across the table, not touching my hand, but reaching toward it. "We've been in family therapy for months," she said. "It was Mary's idea. We didn't want to go at first, but it's helped us see things differently." I didn't rush to forgive them. I didn't make any promises. Instead, I showed them photos of the twins and told them about our new life. For once, they listened quietly. They didn't interrupt or make the conversation about themselves. As we got up to leave, my father asked softly, "Do you think we could get to know the twins someday?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. "That depends on what you do, not what you say," I replied. "If you're really serious about changing, we can start with short, supervised visits. But understand this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." As I walked away from that meeting, I didn't feel guilt or anger like I used to. Instead, I felt calm and strong, like someone who knew her worth. Maybe my parents would truly change, maybe not. But I had already changed. I was no longer a daughter begging for approval. I was a mother, strong and clear, protecting her children and standing firm in her boundaries. They had labeled my chair with a sign that said "Family Made," and everyone laughed when I saw it. That was the moment I knew deep down, I wasn't truly part of this family. Not really. To them, I was just the help. The joke. The one who cooked the meals, cleaned up afterward, and stayed out of the spotlight. I wasn't treated like an actual family member. I was just someone who made things easier for them. And while everyone around the table laughed, my mother-in-law smiled sweetly at me like she hadn't just humiliated me in front of the whole family. That's when something inside me shifted. I knew things couldn't go on like this. Something had to change. I didn't know it then, but justice was already on its way, wearing a suit and carrying a legal notice. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to the moment everything fell into place. The house was filled with fake holiday happiness. Soft jazz music played in the background, and the smell of turkey, nutmeg, and cinnamon floated through the air. On the outside, it all looked perfect. But inside, I felt that familiar pressure in my chest. That heavy feeling I always got when I was around Olivia, my mother-in-law. I had just walked in, carrying 2 freshly baked pecan pies. They were still warm, and I could feel the heat through the foil. My hands trembled a little, but I told myself it was just because of the cold weather, or maybe the nerves. I never arrived empty-handed. Never. In fact, I had cooked at least half of the dishes on the table. But none of that seemed to matter to them. Then I saw it. My usual chair at the end of the long, perfectly decorated table. It was the seat nearest the kitchen, easy for me to hop up and fetch anything people needed. But this time, something was different. A shiny satin ribbon was tied to the back, and on the front, a big sign was taped to the chair. In thick, bold black letters it read, "Family Made." I froze for a moment, confused. Maybe it wasn't meant for me. Maybe it was some sort of silly Thanksgiving joke. But then Olivia's voice filled the room. "Oh, Lauren," she called out, pretending to be surprised. "Look, we saved your seat. Don't worry, you'll still be serving, just like always." She threw her head back and laughed loudly, like she'd just made the funniest joke in the world. The others joined in. Her sister Nicole rolled her eyes and giggled. Emma, the other sister, gave a tight smile, but didn't say a word. Even my husband Scott glanced up from his phone, smirked, then quickly looked away. That was the moment I knew I'd had enough. And soon they would realize that too. I just stood there, holding the pies. My hands were shaking, and I could feel my face getting hot. But it wasn't anger, at least not at first. It was something worse.
Shame.
That deep, painful feeling that rises up your spine and makes you feel small. I didn't know what to say. My mouth tried to smile, but I think it came out more like a twitch. My whole body felt frozen. My heart was beating so loud I could barely hear anything else. Inside, I was screaming. Why would they do this to me? Why would he let them treat me like this again? I looked at Scott, my husband, but he didn't look back. He stared at his phone, pretending he didn't see anything. Pretending this wasn't happening. Pretending his mother hadn't embarrassed me in front of everyone again. I took a deep breath and swallowed the lump in my throat. Then slowly I started walking toward the table. My legs felt like they were made of jelly. The pies in my arms were still warm, and the heat was starting to sting my skin. But I didn't mind. That warmth reminded me that I was still here. Still standing. I placed the pies gently on the sideboard, trying to act normal, even though I felt broken inside. As I turned back toward the table, I felt a small vibration in my pocket. 3 short buzzes. A message. With shaky hands, I pulled out my phone. My heart was still racing as I looked at the screen. It was a message from my son, Adam. He's 25 now. My rock. My reason to keep going. The text was short. Only 3 words. "We're coming in." I stared at the message, confused at first. What did he mean? Was he already outside? Was someone with him? I didn't know. But something in my gut told me things were about to change. Earlier that morning, I had told myself I could handle it. Just one more Thanksgiving, I whispered while getting ready. I had said the same thing every year, like it would make it easier. Like it would protect me. I woke up at 4 a.m., just like always. Quietly slipped out of bed, so I wouldn't disturb Scott. Not that he would have noticed, he had checked out emotionally a long time ago. Probably still buried in his work emails or sports updates. The kitchen was freezing. I wrapped my robe tightly around me and got started. The first thing I made was my grandmother's stuffing. Her recipe. The one I memorized after she passed away. As the onions and sage cooked, the smell filled the kitchen. It should have made me feel warm, safe. But it didn't. That tight feeling in my chest came back. That same nervous energy I always felt whenever Olivia, my mother-in-law, was around. And this year, like every other year, I was expected to smile through it. But this time, something was different. I kept looking at the clock. I only had 3 hours left. I needed to finish baking the pies, chill Adam's favorite cranberry compote, and also make sure Scott had ironed a shirt. Of course, he wouldn't think to do it himself. As I rushed around the kitchen, I could feel the tension building in my body. My shoulders were tight, and my jaw ached from clenching it. I kept telling myself, maybe this year will be different. Maybe Olivia, my mother-in-law, would be kind. Maybe Nicole wouldn't say one of her usual rude jokes disguised as a compliment. Maybe, just maybe, someone would notice how much work I had put into this meal. All the hours of cooking, cleaning, and planning. But deep down, I already knew better. Around 10 a.m., Scott finally wandered into the kitchen. He yawned, shirtless, scratching his head like he was the star of some lazy sitcom. "Smells good," he mumbled, grabbing a slice of bread from the counter. "You almost done?" he asked. "Almost," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Just need to get the pies in the oven." He kissed my cheek without even looking at me, then walked away down the hall. No offer to help. No words of appreciation. Just silence. That same silence we had both gotten used to over the last few years. It had become our normal. A quiet house full of unspoken things. As I rolled out the pie crust, my hands moved like they had done it 100 times, which they had. But my mind wasn't in the kitchen anymore. I was thinking about Adam. He had called me just a few nights ago. "Mom," he said, "you don't have to go this year. You know that, right? You don't owe them anything." I had laughed, trying to sound fine. I told him it was okay. That I didn't want to make a big deal, or cause any drama. That it was better to keep the peace. But Adam had gone quiet. Then he said something I couldn't forget. "Peace isn't real peace if it costs you your dignity." I didn't say anything at the time, but his words stayed with me. He was right. I had been mixing up silence with strength. I thought putting up with everything was a form of grace. But every year I lost a little more of myself just to be allowed to sit at their table. After packing up the food and loading everything into the car, I stood in the driveway for a full minute before getting in. My hands were cold as I held the steering wheel. My stomach was twisted with nerves. I wasn't scared of Olivia, not really. I was scared of what I had been avoiding for years. The truth. The truth that maybe, just maybe, I was never really welcome at all. I had never truly been welcome, not really. The ride to Olivia's house was silent. Scott sat next to me, typing away on his phone the entire time, barely saying a word. I stared out the window, watching dead leaves swirl across the empty road. The sky was gray and heavy, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something bad to happen. As we pulled into Olivia's driveway, I was already preparing myself. I had practiced my fake smile in my head. I reminded myself to be polite, quiet, and helpful, like always. To blend into the background, stay invisible, and not cause any problems. But what I didn't know was that Olivia had something planned for me that day. This time, she wasn't going to ignore me like usual. No, this time she wanted to humiliate me. And even she wasn't ready for what was coming next. I wish I could say I was shocked. But deep down, I wasn't. The moment I walked into the dining room and saw the sign taped to the back of my chair, a piece of me sank. It was written in big black letters. Family made. The same words they all used to mock me, to remind me I wasn't one of them. The pies I was carrying were still warm in my hands, but suddenly, my fingers felt cold. My chest tightened, like someone had wrapped a rope around it and pulled hard. I stood there, frozen.
I didn't want to believe it was for me.
I told myself maybe it was a mistake. But then Olivia turned around, and her eyes lit up when she saw me. She had been waiting for this moment. "Oh, Lauren," she said in her sweet, fake voice. "We saved your usual seat." Then she added with a big smile and a loud voice so everyone could hear, "Don't worry, you'll still be serving, just like always." The room filled with laughter. But it wasn't warm or kind. It was the kind of laughter that cuts you like tiny knives hidden behind smiles. Nicole laughed so hard, she had to cover her mouth with a napkin. Emma gave a small, polite chuckle, but quickly looked away, clearly uncomfortable. She couldn't even look me in the eye. And Scott, my own husband, looked at the chair, then at me, then back at his phone. He didn't say anything. Not a single word. I stood there, holding both pies, my face burning. I tried to smile, but I couldn't. My throat felt tight. My jaw hurt from clenching. My eyes stung with tears I refused to let fall. Not in front of them. Not again. I told myself to move. Just walk to the kitchen.
Put the pies down.
Pretend like it didn't hurt. But my legs wouldn't move. My mind screamed. Why? Why do they treat me like this every year? And I knew the answer. Because I let them. I always showed up early and stayed late. I was the one who cooked, cleaned, and smiled through everything while they barely noticed me. They treated me like I was just part of the background. I never truly stood up for myself. Not really. And Scott, my husband, never stood up for me either. They didn't respect me because no one ever made them. I had allowed it year after year. And now they had turned me into a joke. A label. Just a punchline taped to a chair. Oh, come on. It's just a bit of fun, Olivia said sweetly, her voice full of fake kindness. You know how much we appreciate you. I looked at her. This time, I didn't look away. I really looked at her. The perfectly ironed blouse, the neat pearl necklace, the way she held her head high like she was better than everyone else. And in that moment, something hit me hard. She didn't see me as part of the family. She never had. To her, I was just useful, easy to manage, good for doing the work no one else wanted to do, but never truly equal. Without saying a word, I turned around and walked to the kitchen. My arms felt heavy, my body stiff. Behind me, I heard a few soft laughs, a chair scraping across the floor, glasses clinking, but it all felt far away. My heart was beating so loudly that everything else seemed quiet. I set the pies on the counter and leaned against it, staring out the kitchen window. The backyard looked gray and lifeless. Bare tree branches moved slightly in the wind. I felt hollow, like something had been taken from me. Then my phone buzzed again. I pulled it from my pocket, thinking it might be a spam message, or maybe Adam saying he'd be late. But it wasn't that. Be there in 11. My hands started shaking. My breath caught. He was coming. And he wasn't coming alone. For the first time that day, something broke through all the shame and anger that had been building inside me. Hope. I stared at the message like it was a rope pulling me out of deep water. 10 minutes. I just had to stay calm for 10 more minutes. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, stood up straight, and took a deep breath. My skin still felt hot, my chest still tight, but something inside me had changed. A quiet voice was growing stronger. Not angry.
Just done.
I walked back into the dining room. Everyone was seated. The family maid sign still hung on the back of my chair like a proud little joke. I reached for it calmly. Let me take that down, Olivia offered sweetly, pretending to be helpful now that the joke had landed. No need, I replied. My voice was steady, even stronger than I felt. I folded the sign in half and placed it gently on the sideboard. Olivia watched me, her smile slipping just a little, like she didn't know what I was going to do next. I sat in the chair, the one they had labeled, not because I accepted it, but because I was about to change everything. I sat down in that chair, not because I accepted the label they gave me, but because it was mine. I was taking it back, reclaiming my place. I could feel their eyes glancing at me. They noticed something was different, but they didn't understand what had changed. I gave a small, quiet smile. I didn't say a word. Scott was still glued to his phone, scrolling like nothing had happened. Or maybe pretending not to notice, like always. He finally looked up when I reached for my glass of water. You okay? He asked, his voice low and unsure. I looked him straight in the eyes. I'm fine. He nodded quickly, relieved that I didn't seem angry. He never liked uncomfortable moments. He avoided arguments or anything that made him face the truth. especially when it came for me. But I wasn't there to start a fight. I was there to finish something. You see, a few nights before Thanksgiving, I had finally opened up to Adam, my son. We were talking on the phone, just catching up, when something inside me broke. I told him everything. About the years of small, mean comments. About the so-called jokes that were never funny. About all the hard work I did that no one ever thanked me for, but always expected. I told him about last Thanksgiving too. How Olivia said there wasn't enough room at the table and made me eat at the kitchen counter while everyone else toasted pumpkin pie and laughed together. There was a long silence. Then Adam spoke. You know this isn't normal, right? I'm used to it, I replied. Mom, he said quietly, just because you're used to it doesn't mean you should have to deal with it. His voice was calm but serious. I recognized that tone.
It meant he was about to do something.
He told me about his internship at a small law firm. They helped women who faced emotional abuse, not the kind that leaves bruises, but the kind that slowly makes you feel invisible. He told me his mentor, Larry, had handled cases like mine, where women were tired of being pushed aside, dismissed, and ignored. Women who finally said, enough. I laughed at first. What am I supposed to do? Sue them for being mean? But he didn't laugh. No, he said, but we can send them a legal notice. A boundary. That word, boundary, stayed with me. So, we planned. With Larry's help, we wrote a cease and desist letter. It wasn't a lawsuit, just a clear message. A line drawn. A legal and emotional statement saying, I matter. My time matters. My feelings matter. And now they were almost here. The sounds around me, forks clinking, forced laughter, wine being poured, faded into the background. I sat in the same chair they had mocked me with. But I didn't feel weak. I felt strong. Then there was a knock on the door. Soft, but it echoed like thunder. Everyone froze. Olivia stopped mid-sentence, clutching the gravy boat like it suddenly weighed too much. Nicole's laugh died off awkwardly. Scott looked toward the hallway, confused. Something was coming. And for once, I wasn't the one who should be afraid. I didn't move at first. My heart was beating hard in my chest, but the rest of me felt calm and clear. Then came a second knock, louder this time. I'll get it, I said, standing up. Scott looked surprised. You don't have to. But I was already walking down the hallway. Each step felt like I was letting go of the past. Letting go of all the times I stayed quiet. All the times I was the helper, the peacemaker, the one who cooked and cleaned without thanks. That version of me was gone. I opened the door. There was Adam, standing tall and serious in a dark jacket I didn't recognize. His face looked strong, but his eyes softened when he saw me. Right behind him was Larry, wearing a gray suit and holding a folder. He looked calm and confident, the kind of confidence that makes people nervous.
Hi, Mom, Adam said.
Right on time, I whispered and stepped aside to let them in. Olivia was already at the end of the hallway. She stood with her hands on her hips, her smile stiff like she didn't know whether to act friendly or angry. Adam, what a surprise, she said in a sweet fake voice. You didn't say you were bringing someone. Adam gave her a small smile. This is Larry. He's here for my mom. The room went quiet. Larry gave a polite nod. Good afternoon. We're here to deliver a formal notice about the misuse of personal labor, emotional stress, and the ongoing expectation of unpaid work. Olivia blinked. Excuse me? Scott stood up. What is this? I stepped forward. It's not a lawsuit, I said calmly, looking Olivia in the eyes. It's a formal boundary. A cease and desist letter that explains what I will and will not continue to do in this family. Nicole rolled her eyes. You've got to be kidding. No, Larry said simply. He opened the folder and handed Olivia the document. This explains all the work she's done over the years. Cooking, cleaning, planning holidays, organizing things, all without thanks or payment. It also says she won't take part in family events unless she's treated with respect. Emma finally spoke. Lauren, why didn't you say anything? I did, I said, turning to her. Just never with lawyers before. Scott looked shocked. You brought legal stuff to Thanksgiving? No, I said quietly. You did. The moment you sat there and let them embarrass me again. Olivia's face had gone pale. Her voice trembled. It was just a joke. No, I said. It was a pattern. For the first time in years, the room was truly silent. Not the fake, awkward silence. Real, heavy silence. I looked at the chair, the one with the folded sign, and something inside me felt lighter. Like I had finally put down a weight I'd been carrying for too long. Adam came and stood beside me, his hands in his pockets. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. Olivia clutched the papers like they were burning. You're tearing this family apart, she whispered. I shook my head.
No.
I'm saving myself from all of it. Then I turned around, walked past the table, and headed straight for the front door. Larry followed me, calm and professional. Adam looked at me, waiting. You ready? He asked. I nodded. I've been ready for years. The drive home was quiet, but not the uncomfortable kind of quiet. It was peaceful. Adam kept glancing over at me, like he was trying to figure out how I felt. I didn't say much. I was still thinking about everything that had just happened. I looked out the window, watching the trees pass by. The bare branches danced in the wind. And I thought to myself, I'm never going back there again. Not like that. When we reached my house, Adam walked me to the door. He looked at me like I might break down the moment I stepped inside. But I didn't. Instead, I poured myself a cup of tea, took off my shoes, and sat at my own kitchen table. My table. I let myself feel everything, not just the hurt, not just the anger, but the relief. It felt like a heavy weight had been taken off my shoulders. After all those years of keeping my mouth shut, I had finally said, enough. The next morning, I woke up late. I didn't clean up after anyone. I didn't fold anyone's laundry. I didn't cook a big meal for people who wouldn't even thank me. Instead, I made pancakes just for me, and I ate them in bed. It's strange how guilt can hide itself and pretend to be loyalty. For over 11 years, I believed I was keeping the peace by staying quiet. I thought I was strong for putting up with everything. I believed that being a good wife meant doing whatever made Scott's family happy, even if it made me miserable. But peace built on silence isn't real peace. It's like slowly erasing yourself. And loyalty? It's supposed to go both ways. Real loyalty includes respect. That evening, Scott sent me a text. Just a few words. That was unnecessary. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. I didn't reply. We haven't talked much since. He moved into a hotel a few days later. I didn't ask where or why. I didn't need to. Deep down, I knew this had been coming for a long time. We had been drifting apart quietly for years. And the moment I stopped playing the role he liked, the quiet, helpful wife, everything changed. And honestly, that's okay. I'm done playing roles. Adam checks in on me every few days. He brought dinner over last weekend. He made lasagna. He burned the edges, but I loved it anyway. He smiled and said, "It's your turn to be taken care of now." I couldn't even speak. I just smiled back. I just hugged him and tried not to cry. Lately, I've started volunteering at a local women's center. Not because I know everything or have all the answers, but because I understand. I understand how easy it is to lose yourself, to become quiet, small, and agreeable until one day, you don't even recognize the woman looking back at you in the mirror. But now I do. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone who finally chose herself. Not out of anger, not for revenge, but because of truth and strength. Thanksgiving is different now. There are no crowded tables, no fake smiles, and no hurtful labels. Just peace. Real peace. Sometimes I think back to that chair, the one they labeled family made. And you know what? I smile. Because they were right about one thing. I did serve. I served meals, love, patience, and strength. But this year, I served something new. This year, I served boundaries. I served self-respect. And I served justice, cold, with a side of dignity. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched your heart, if you've ever felt ignored, unappreciated, or invisible in your own family or relationship, please know this. you're not alone. You deserve better. You deserve love, respect, and peace. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply choose yourself. If you found this story moving or meaningful, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories about strength, healing, and finding your voice. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth. The elevator at Trident Core Systems felt even smaller than usual as I stood beside Larry, my ex-husband. We had been divorced for 3 years, but seeing him still made my stomach twist. We were headed up to the executive floor, watching the floor numbers slowly light up one by one. Larry stood there, wearing that same smug smile he always had. It used to charm me back when we were married. Now it just made me feel sick. "You're looking tired, Jennifer," he said in that same fake sweet voice he always used when he wanted to sound caring. I was wearing a simple black blazer and holding my laptop bag. I work as a consultant now, helping companies grow and fix problems. "Consulting must be tough these days," he added with a smirk. "My name is Jennifer Syme," I thought to myself, holding in a deep breath. "I'm 40 years old, and today I'm going to teach my ex-husband the most expensive lesson of his life." But of course, he didn't know that yet. "Actually, business is great," I replied calmly. I kept my voice flat, showing no emotion. "But I guess you wouldn't know much about that anymore. You've been too busy planning a wedding with my ex-best friend." His smile grew even bigger. "Ah yes, Barbara mentioned she saw you at the country club last week," he said, as if it were no big deal. "She felt awful about everything, but you know how it goes. The heart wants what it wants." What the heart wanted, apparently, was to cheat on me with my best friend while we were still married. Then, divorce me. He claimed we had irreconcilable differences. After that, he worked behind the scenes to push me out of the company we had built together. The elevator chimed as we reached the 40th floor. "Well, this is my stop," Larry said, adjusting his fancy Italian silk tie. "Board meeting, you know how it is." "Oh wait, you don't anymore, do you?" "Not since you gave up your shares during the divorce." "Gave up my shares?" That's how he tells the story. As if I had a choice. The truth is, he planned it all. He controlled the timing of the divorce, planted fake evidence that made it look like I had mishandled company money, and got the board to lose faith in me. By the time I realized what was going on, I had lost both my marriage and my role as chief strategy officer. "Good luck with your meeting," I said with a soft smile as he stepped off the elevator. "I'm sure it'll be eye-opening." He gave me a puzzled look, but the doors closed before he could say anything else. He had no idea what was coming next. I caught a quick look at Barbara standing near the boardroom doors. She was wearing a dress so expensive it probably cost more than most people make in a whole month. At least she had the decency to look a little uncomfortable when her eyes met mine. She quickly looked away, pretending to focus on something else.
I didn't let it bother me.
I waited until the elevator started moving again before I quietly pulled out my phone. I typed a message to Scott, my lawyer. "Me. Is everything ready?" His reply came back instantly. "Scott. All set. The representatives from Langston Mercer are in place. The board doesn't suspect a thing."
Perfect.
3 years of quiet, careful planning were finally about to pay off. When Larry kicked me out of Trident Core Systems, he thought I would just fade away, that I was some sad, heartbroken woman who would cry and move on. But he had no idea what he'd actually created. He turned me into something far more powerful, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Right after the divorce, I started a small consulting firm. It looked like just another business on the outside. But really, it was a cover for my real mission, to take back what I helped build and prove I was stronger than ever. While working with small clients, I started reaching out and building a relationship with Langston Mercer, one of the biggest private equity firms in the country. They had been watching Trident Core Systems from a distance for years, just waiting for the right time to step in. I gave them that moment and much more. I shared everything I knew, how the company worked, where it was weak, what it was worth, and why it was still special. All the secrets Larry thought he had locked away, I had them too. The deal we planned was simple but powerful. Langston Mercer would buy Trident Core Systems through a leveraged buyout. And once the papers were signed, I would be named the new CEO. The price? $3.5 billion. The look on Larry's face when he finds out his ex-wife now owns the company he stole from her? Absolutely priceless. Just then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Barbara. Barbara, can we talk before the board meeting? Please. I thought about ignoring her, but I was too curious. Me. Starbucks across the street. 20 minutes. The coffee shop was surprisingly quiet for a Saturday morning. Barbara was already there when I walked in. She was nervously playing with her huge engagement ring, the one I was sure Larry had paid for using company money. She stood up as I approached. Jennifer, she said softly. Thank you for coming. I know you probably hate me. I looked at her and said calmly, hate takes energy, and I don't waste mine on things that aren't worth it. I'm not willing to waste my energy on you, I said, cutting her off as I sat down. Barbara looked surprised by how direct I was. She wasn't used to this version of me. The Barbara I used to know, the one I had trusted for 16 years, the one who was my maid of honor and my so-called best friend, had always been good at using sweet words to get out of any situation. She was charming, careful, and always knew what to say to make people forgive her. I wanted to explain, she began. About Larry. About everything. I held up a hand and stopped her. Let me guess. It just happened, right? You didn't mean to hurt me. You tried to fight your feelings but couldn't help falling in love. Am I missing anything? Her cheeks turned red. It wasn't like that, she said quickly. Larry, he can be very persuasive when he wants something. Oh, I remember, I said, my voice calm but cold. He persuaded me to marry him. Then he convinced me to put all my inheritance into his company. I trusted him with everything. And what did he do? He talked the board into believing I couldn't do my job. He told our friends I was unstable. And then he convinced you that betraying me was okay. Barbara shifted in her seat, uncomfortable. The board meeting today, she said suddenly, trying to change the topic. Larry is going to announce some big changes. He wants to take the company in a new direction. I let out a short laugh, sharp and cold enough to make her flinch. Is that why you really wanted to meet me? To see if I knew anything about what's going to happen? No, she said quickly. I mean, I know you still have contacts in the industry. I just thought maybe you'd heard something. Heard something? I raised an eyebrow. Like what? That Langston Mercer is buying Trident Core Systems? That the entire board is about to be replaced? That your fiancé is going to lose the company he thinks he owns? The color left her face. She looked pale and shocked. What are you talking about? She whispered. I stood up and fixed my blazer with a calm smile. You should probably head back to the office, Barbara. Wouldn't want to be late for the board meeting. I hear it's going to be interesting. Jennifer, wait, she called after me. What do you know? I turned back, giving her the sweetest smile I could manage. Just that karma, just like Larry, can be very persuasive when she wants something. The next hour passed in a blur. Final documents were signed. Scott confirmed that everything was ready. Langston Mercer's team was in position. Even the security team had been briefed. Everything was set. The moment I had worked so hard for was finally here. I stood in front of the mirror in my temporary office across the street from Trident Core Systems, taking one last look at myself. The plain black blazer I had worn earlier was gone. In its place was a beautifully tailored Chanel suit. My hair was styled neatly, and my makeup was perfect. I didn't just feel ready, I looked the part too. Today, I wasn't just another face in the crowd. I was about to walk in as the new CEO. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Larry. Larry, why are Langston Mercer executives at our board meeting? What did you do? I smiled at my reflection, thinking about all the times Larry had made me feel small. He had underestimated me, pushed me aside, and acted like I didn't matter. But those days were over. Me. On my way. Wouldn't want to miss your big announcement. I replied with a smirk. 3 years had passed, But the Trident Core Systems boardroom looked exactly the same. The same polished mahogany table, the same leather chairs, and the same stunning view of the city from the floor-to-ceiling windows. But this time I was different. I wasn't walking in as Larry's wife. I wasn't the former chief strategy officer who had been pushed out. I was walking in as the new owner. As I stepped into the room, the noise died instantly. Everyone turned to look at me. Larry stood at the head of the table, his face tight with confusion and growing anger. Barbara was beside him, nervously twisting her big engagement ring. The rest of the board, handpicked by Larry, shifted in their chairs, clearly unsure of what was happening. "Jennifer," Larry said coldly, "this is a closed board meeting. You're not allowed to be here." "Actually," I said calmly, placing my briefcase on the table, "I'm exactly where I belong." I nodded toward Scott, who stood up from his seat with the Langston Mercer executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," Scott said, handing folders to everyone at the table, "as of 10 o'clock this morning, Langston Mercer has officially acquired Trident Core Systems. All legal documents have been filed. The transfer of ownership is complete." Larry grabbed one of the folders, his hands shaking as he flipped through the pages. "This can't be real. The board would need to approve something like this." Scott didn't flinch. "Not in this case. The board's approval wasn't required. Ownership rights allowed the sale to proceed through a leveraged buyout." The room was silent. Larry's face turned pale as the truth sank in. I stood tall, meeting every eye in the room. The woman they tried to silence, erase, and forget had just returned stronger than ever, and this time, I was in charge. I stepped in calmly, my voice steady. Langston Mercer gained control of Trident Core Systems by buying up shares over the last 19 months. All done legally, I promise you. Larry's face turned red. "Strategic stock purchases? That's not possible. Those shares were protected, held in family trusts and hidden through holding companies." "Yes," I nodded, "they were. But once your creative accounting practices came to light, some of those trusts were forced to sell their shares. And guess who bought them? Langston Mercer. At very good prices, too." Barbara suddenly stood up, her voice shaky. "Larry, what is she talking about?" I looked at her, feeling a small wave of satisfaction. For years, she had stood by his side, pretending everything was perfect. Now the truth was cracking through. "He's been hiding things, Barbara," I said, looking directly at her. "Moving company money around to pay for personal things, lying about how much profit the company was making, all just to keep the stock price looking good. The kind of tricks that the SEC takes very seriously." "That's a lie," Larry shouted, slamming his hand on the table. His face was twisted with anger. "This is just another one of your games. You're trying to what?" I interrupted firmly. "To protect the company from being destroyed? To bring out the truth? To make sure justice is finally served?" "Yes, Larry. I'm doing all of that." Scott, standing quietly with the Langston Mercer team, cleared his throat. "If you'll all look at page 3 of the folders we handed out," he said, "you'll see the details of the new leadership plan. Miss Jennifer Syme will take over as CEO immediately." The boardroom exploded into noise. Some members spoke over each other. Larry was yelling about lawsuits. Barbara sat down, covering her face, softly crying. But I stood still at the end of the table, calm, strong, and in control. I had waited 3 years for this. "This is my company," Larry finally shouted above the noise. "You can't just walk in here and take everything." I looked him straight in the eyes and spoke quietly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "It's not your company anymore, Larry. You lost it the moment you thought the rules didn't apply to you. When you decided loyalty didn't matter. When you treated people like they could be thrown away." I turned to the rest of the board. "Those of you who were not part of Larry's actions are welcome to stay, pending a full review. But anyone who helped cover up the lies? Please clean out your desks by the end of today. Security will be watching." Larry stepped toward me, his face full of rage. "You planned this? You've been planning this the whole time. You're vindictive." Just then, 3 security guards appeared at the door. I didn't flinch. I simply smiled and said, "No, Larry. I'm prepared. I didn't need to signal the guards. Everything had been planned ahead of time. One of the security officers stepped forward and said firmly, "Mr. Justin, please come with us. We'll help you pack up your office." Larry was still shouting, throwing around threats and accusations, but the guards stayed calm as they led him away. I watched him go without saying a word. Then I saw Barbara walking toward me. Her face was a mess, mascara running, tears in her eyes. She no longer looked like the confident woman she always pretended to be. "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "About the fraud? The hidden accounts?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't want to know," she whispered. It was easier to believe him. To think that I was the problem. That maybe I deserved everything that happened. I looked at her closely. This was the same woman I had once trusted more than anyone, besides Larry. She had been my closest friend. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice calm. "If either of you had just been honest, if you'd admitted the affair, ended things respectfully, none of this would have happened." "What do you mean?" she asked, confused. "I would have been hurt, of course. Angry, yes. But I would have signed the divorce papers, kept my shares, and moved on with my life. But instead, you both chose lies and betrayal. And now, this is the result of those choices." The next few hours passed in a blur. Security escorted Larry and several board members out of the building. The HR team started processing their termination papers. Meanwhile, the Langston Mercer audit team began reviewing the company's records. They moved fast, checking documents, reviewing emails, and gathering evidence. By late afternoon, I finally had a quiet moment in what was now my office, Larry's former corner office, with its amazing view of the city skyline. Barbara had left earlier. Her dream of becoming Mrs. Justin and a powerful company director had ended in a single morning. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Larry. "Larry, this isn't over. You won't get away with this." I smiled, thinking about the SEC investigation that would be announced the next day. Every piece of evidence was ready: his fraud, the fake numbers, the illegal transfers. All of it. "Me, it is over, Larry. The only question is if you'll face the truth like a man, or make it even worse for yourself." Just then, Scott walked in holding a bottle of champagne. "Congratulations, CEO Tham. Phase 1 is complete." I took the glass he offered and watched the bubbles rise. "How's the first look at the accounts going?" I asked. He gave a small grin. "Honestly, about as bad as we expected." I nodded, sipping the drink. "Good. That means we're right on track." "As we expected," Scott said, looking over the initial reports. "Larry has been messing with the company's finances for years. The SEC is going to have a lot to work with." He glanced at me and added, "But the good news is, the actual business is still strong. The products are good, the staff is talented. Once we clean things up and put proper rules in place, trying core systems, well, or whatever new name you choose, can be better than ever." I walked over to the large window, staring out at the city below. So many lights, so many lives moving forward. "You know what's strange?" I said quietly. "I didn't do any of this just for revenge. Not really. I did it because the company deserves better. The people who work here, they deserve better than what Larry turned it into." Scott nodded. "Speaking of the team," he said while checking his phone, "the email just went out to all staff about the new ownership. Your inbox is probably filling up already." I smiled and walked over to my desk. It was sleek and modern. Nothing like Larry's huge, flashy mahogany desk that had screamed for attention. I opened my laptop, and just as Scott said, hundreds of emails were already coming in. Many were from people I had worked with before. One message stood out. It was from Elizabeth, my former assistant, the one Larry fired right after he pushed me out of the company. Subject: "Welcome back. Welcome back, boss. The real Trident Core Systems has missed you." I felt a rush of emotion reading that. Elizabeth had always been loyal, and it meant the world to know that people still believed in me. Later that evening, as I was walking to my car in the parking garage, I noticed someone waiting by it. It was Barbara. Her makeup had been redone, but her eyes were still puffy and red from crying. "They've arrested him," she said, not wasting a second. "The SEC came to his house about an hour ago. They took him away." I nodded calmly. I know. There was too much evidence. Once it was all shown to them properly, they couldn't ignore it. She looked at me, her face tight with emotion. "Did you ever love him? I mean, really love him?" I paused for a moment, thinking about it. "I loved who I thought he was," I said softly. "Just like I loved who I thought you were." "That's the thing about betrayal," I continued. "It doesn't just break relationships. It breaks the memories of what those relationships used to mean." She wiped away another tear. "I'm so sorry, Jennifer. For everything." "I know you are," I said, unlocking my car door. "But being sorry doesn't fix what's broken. It just means you see the damage now." She looked down. "Then what matters?" "What matters," I said, getting into the car, "is what we learn from it, and who we become because of it." I looked at Barbara, really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't just see the friend who betrayed me or the woman who had taken my husband. I saw a person, a woman who had made some very bad choices and was finally starting to understand what those choices had cost her. "I've learned something," I said softly. "Real strength doesn't come from getting revenge. It comes from choosing to rebuild, from taking what's broken and turning it into something stronger." I looked her in the eye. "That's what I'm going to do with this company. And that's what you'll need to do with your life now." She didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, eyes full of regret. Later that night, as I drove home, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. My phone buzzed again. It was another message from Larry's lawyer this time. "Message: we can make a deal. Just ask the SEC to step back. Let's talk." I didn't even read it twice. I deleted the message and tossed my phone onto the seat beside me. Some people never learn. But that was no longer my problem. I had a company to lead, a future to build, employees who were counting on me. I wasn't looking back anymore. The next morning, I walked into the building that had once been the center of so much pain. But today, it felt different. Soon, Trident Core Systems would have a new name: Phoenix Industries. A name that stood for rising again, for second chances, for strength after being burned. The security guard at the front desk smiled and nodded as I walked in. In the elevator, employees greeted me with friendly faces and warm words. Their eyes no longer looked afraid or uncertain. They looked hopeful. When I reached my new office, Elizabeth was already there. She was holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of reports in the other. "Ready to change the world, boss?" she asked with a big smile. I laughed softly and took the coffee. "Let's do it." I sat down at my desk. It was sleek, simple, and full of possibility. I turned to look out the window. The same city where I had once lost everything now looked brand new, full of opportunity, full of hope. "We're going to build something amazing," I said. "Something we can all be proud of." And deep in my heart, I knew that this wasn't just about business. It was about healing, about rising stronger, and about finally becoming the woman I was always meant to be. I stood in the cold rain, watching movers carry expensive furniture into my sister Betty's brand new mansion. It was a wedding gift from our parents, a $3.5 million house in one of the richest neighborhoods in Seattle. I couldn't help but feel small as I stood there, soaked from head to toe. My own home was a tiny apartment above the bookstore where I worked, and I could barely pay rent each month. "This is just perfect for them," my mom said excitedly, not even noticing how wet I was. "Betty and Paul will be so happy here. And just think, there's plenty of space for grandchildren." She smiled brightly, completely ignoring me. I forced myself to smile too, even though it hurt. I thought of the cheap congratulations card I had bought after digging through my change. "It's beautiful, Mom," I said, trying to sound happy. Betty walked out of the house looking like she had stepped out of a magazine. She wore stylish designer clothes, and her big shiny engagement ring caught the little bit of sunlight peeking through the clouds. "Margaret, you finally made it," she called out, using my full name like it was a surprise. "I even showed up. What do you think of our little starter home?" "Starter home?" as if a mansion that cost nearly $4 million was just their beginning. "It's lovely," I said quietly. "A perfect wedding present." Betty laughed and gave me a look. "Oh, don't be jealous, Margarita," she said, using the nickname I couldn't stand. "I'm sure you'll find someone special too. Maybe one of those nice guys at the bookstore." Then my mom joined in. "You know, the Thomas boy is still single. He's an accountant now, very stable job." I bit my tongue and said nothing. I was 33 years old, with a master's degree in literature, and I was writing my first novel. But to them, none of that mattered. To them, I was the one who failed, the daughter who picked dreams instead of money, books instead of business. "I should go," I mumbled. "My shift starts soon." On a Thursday, my mom frowned. Betty rolled her eyes. "Still so dramatic, Margarita. This is why you struggle. You always pick the hard road instead of letting people help you." Help. That's what they called it. But their help always came with conditions, things I had to give up, things I didn't want. I had said no to a full scholarship to business school. I had turned down a job offer at Dad's firm. I had ignored the blind dates they set up with men they called suitable. They never understood that their kind of help was just control with a smile. It was like wearing golden handcuffs. I looked toward the bookstore across town, my little world, my quiet space. "They're short-staffed today," I said. Then I turned and walked away, the rain still falling, but my heart just a little lighter. I already said goodbye. I told my mom as I turned to leave. "And I really need to work hours." "At least take some leftovers home," she said, sounding worried. "I hate thinking about you eating alone in that tiny apartment." I didn't say anything back. I didn't tell her that my small apartment was actually my safe space, my own little world filled with books, paintings, and quiet. It was the only place I could think clearly. A place where I could write without anyone judging me. A place where I could dream without limits. The next morning, I stopped at Tyler's corner store like I always did for my usual cup of coffee. Tyler was like a grandpa to me. He'd been running that shop for over 50 years. But today, he looked more excited than usual. "Margaret, did you check your lottery ticket yet?" he asked, eyes wide. I blinked, confused. Then I remembered. 3 days ago, I had spent my last $6 on a lottery ticket. It was a silly impulse. The jackpot had hit a record high, and I just thought, why not? "Not yet," I said, pulling the crumpled ticket from my wallet. "What were the winning numbers?" Tyler's eyes sparkled as he leaned closer. "Check the news, sweetheart." I pulled out my phone and opened the lottery website. My heart pounded as the numbers popped up on the screen. 9, 16, 25, 33, 45, 54, 65. I looked at my ticket. Then I looked at the screen again. My hands started to shake. "Tyler," I whispered, barely able to speak, "I think I won." He gave me a huge grin. "I know you did, honey. I watched the drawing live last night. All 7 numbers matched. You just won $100 million. The world around me started to spin. I held onto the counter to steady myself. "Sit down before you fall down," Tyler said, helping me into a chair. "Take deep breaths. This is huge. But you have to be smart now. Don't tell anyone yet. Get a lawyer first. And for heaven's sake, sign the back of that ticket." With shaking hands, I signed the back of the lottery ticket. My name looked messy, but it was there. Tyler took the ticket and locked it safely in his store's backroom safe. He gave me a glass of water and told me to drink it. Then he called his daughter, Emily, a respected financial attorney. "She'll meet you in an hour," Tyler said. "She'll help you handle everything the right way." I nodded slowly, still in shock. "Tyler, what about my family?" I asked quietly. He gently squeezed my shoulder and said, "We'll deal with that later. Right now, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you." And in that moment, I knew everything had changed. I sat waiting for Emily when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister, Betty. "Family brunch tomorrow to talk about the wedding. Wear something nice for once. And don't be late like always." I stared at her message, thinking about her big mansion, her perfect life, and how her parents always praised her. For the past 18 years, I had been treated like the one who didn't fit in, the daughter they thought was a failure. They saw me as someone who didn't make good choices, someone who was always chasing silly dreams. But now, everything was different. I had $100 million, and I finally had a chance to show them they were wrong. I typed back, "Sorry, I can't make it. I have something more important to do." For once, I wasn't lying. For weeks later, I sat in Emily's office, signing the last papers to officially claim my lottery prize. Emily, who is Tyler's daughter, had helped me every step of the way. She helped me set up bank accounts, trusts, and strong privacy rules so my name would stay protected. "Just remember," Emily said, looking over the documents, "once we send this in, your name will be in the news. Are you ready for that?" I thought about the things I'd already done. I had quietly quit my job at the bookstore and left a big check to my manager so she could hire and train someone new. I bought a lovely but simple house in a peaceful neighborhood and used a trust to keep my name off any public documents. I even started building my own publishing company to help writers like me, people who were often ignored, share their stories. "I'm ready," I told her with confidence. The next morning, my name and face were everywhere. The news in Seattle shouted the story. Local woman wins $100 million lottery. Bookstore worker becomes rich overnight. Margaret Smith claims record jackpot. My phone lit up nonstop. Old classmates, distant relatives, and people I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly texting me. But the messages I had expected the most came last. Betty wrote, "OMG Margarita. Why didn't you tell us? Call me now." Then my mom. "Margaret Elizabeth Smith. How could you keep this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where do you live?" Finally, Dad. "Your mother is freaking out. Call us this second." I looked at my phone, then turned it off. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down in my new home office. Through the window, I could see the garden where I planned to build a little reading corner. The morning sun made everything glow with a soft golden light. It felt peaceful. It felt like a fresh start.
The doorbell rang.
I glanced at the screen connected to my new security camera, one of Emily's smart ideas. I saw them standing on my porch, my parents and Betty. Betty looked like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot, and my mom kept fixing her expensive dress like she was nervous. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Margaret," my mom said right away. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you answered our calls? And how could you afford this house? You haven't even gotten the lottery money yet." "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "Would you like to come in?" They stepped inside and looked around the living room. I could tell they were surprised by how nice it was. The clean furniture, the full bookshelves, everything in its place. Betty ran her finger along one of the shelves and said, "Well, now you can finally move to a better area. There's a beautiful house near mine for sale. It's only $5 million. I'm happy here," I said, cutting her off. "But thank you for the suggestion." "Margarita, darling," my mom said sweetly, leaning closer. "You have to understand, this is a lot of money. It will change your life. You'll need help managing it. Your father knows some great money experts." "I already have a team of advisors," I replied. "And it's Margaret, not Margarita." Betty's smile dropped. "Don't be so difficult," she snapped. "We're only trying to help. You've never been good with money. Remember when I loaned you $20,000 for your small business? You mean the money you never paid back?" I asked quietly. Betty's face turned red. "That was different. I needed it." "What you needed," I said, standing up, "was to take responsibility. Something none of you have ever expected from her." My dad finally spoke. His face was red with anger. "We've always treated both of you the same." I actually laughed. "Equally? You bought Betty a mansion for her wedding. You paid for her business school, her first car, her dream wedding. What did I get for graduation? A speech about how my dreams weren't realistic. We were just worried about your future," my mom said. "You were always chasing big ideas. We only wanted what was best."
"No," I said.
"You wanted me to be like Betty, the perfect daughter, the one who followed the rules. But guess what? My so-called bad choices led me here. Working at the bookstore, the job you all look down on, that's where I bought the winning ticket. Betty smiled again like she was doing me a favor. Well, now you can finally live properly. We can help you invest, introduce you to the right people. No, I said firmly. The room went silent. What do you mean no? My dad asked, confused. I walked over to my desk and pulled out 4 envelopes. Betty, I said, handing her one. This is a check for $120,000, paying you back for that loan you love to bring up. I gave Betty the first envelope. Then I turned to my parents and handed them the second one. Mom, Dad, I said, this check is for $25,000. That's the total amount of every gift, payment, and help you've ever given me. I kept track of everything. They looked at the envelopes, stunned and silent. The third envelope, I continued, has papers that show I've already started my own publishing company, created a charity to help kids read, and invested my money with one of the best companies in the country. I looked them in the eyes. I didn't need your help back then, and I definitely don't need it now. But we're family, my mom said quietly. Yes, we are, I replied. And family should love without conditions. They should support your dreams, not crush them. They should accept who you are, not try to change you. I walked to the front door and opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation. We're discussing how to build new libraries in communities that really need them. My father stood stiffly. You're making a mistake. You need us. I smiled, feeling free for the first time in years.
No, Dad. You need me.
And that's why you're really here, isn't it? Betty stood up, her face full of anger. So now you think you're better than us just because you won the lottery? No, Betty, I said calmly. I was always enough. You just never saw it. As they turned to leave, my mother looked back at me with tears in her eyes. Margaret, please, she said softly. We were wrong. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw how small and lost they all looked. They were stuck in their old way of thinking about success and value. Maybe someday, I said gently, but not today. I closed the door as they began to protest. Then I walked back to my office. On my desk sat the manuscript of my novel, a story about a girl who finds her voice in a world that tries to keep her quiet. It was time to start writing the next chapter of my life. 7 months later, the launch party for Smith Publishing House was everything I had dreamed. We turned an old warehouse into a warm, creative space full of books, art, and hope. Local authors we had signed chatted with book agents and reporters. Kids from our reading program proudly showed off their own stories in a special area we had made just for them. Tyler stood next to me, smiling like a proud grandfather. Look at what you've built, Margaret, he said. And you didn't waste a single penny showing off. He was right. I could have bought a big, shiny office downtown. But instead, I fixed up this old building and made it feel like home, a place for writers and readers to belong. I had used the lottery money to support education, help new writers, and build something that truly mattered.
Just then my phone buzzed.
A text from Betty. Saw your company in the business journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you.
Paul lost his job.
We could use some family help right now. I deleted the message without replying. For months, they had tried everything, guilt, fake kindness, and then demands. Betty said her mansion was now too small. Mom and Dad said they needed money to renew their country club membership. Paul had lost money on bad investments and wanted help. I ignored all of it. Miss Smith, a small voice said, tugging my sleeve. It was Laura, one of the sweet girls from our reading program. She was holding a notebook close to her chest. Will you read my story? She asked softly. Of course, Laura, I said with a smile. I led her to a quiet corner and sat beside her. What's your story about? It's about a girl who finds a magic pen, Laura said shyly. Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really important to write about. I smiled again. Sometimes the biggest wisdom comes from the smallest voices.
Margaret.
I looked up. My mother was standing there. She looked out of place. Her fancy look had faded. She wasn't as polished as usual. I could see the stress in her face. The past few months hadn't been easy for them. My dad's business had lost big clients. Betty's perfect marriage was starting to break apart. Their rich friends had begun pulling away as their money problems grew. "Mom, this is a private event," I said gently. "I know," she replied, "but I need to talk to you." She glanced at Laura. "Alone." I turned to Laura. "Why don't you show your story to Miss Carroll? She's our children's book editor." Once Laura ran off, I turned to my mom. "Dad's company is failing," she said quickly. "Betty's house is being taken by the bank. Everything's falling apart. And you're here playing with children's stories?" I stood up. My anger rose. "Playing?" I said. "Look around, Mom. Really look. These kids are learning to love reading. They're finding their voices. These writers are getting chances they never had before. I'm not playing. I'm building something real. But your family," she started, "has never respected my choices." I cut in. "Even now, you're not here to support me. You're here because you want money." She flinched. "We're still your family," she whispered. "Are you?" I asked. I walked her over to the wall in our center. It was filled with pictures, kids reading, authors signing books, events that changed lives. "Family cheers for your wins. Family supports your dreams," I said. "When was the last time you asked about my novel? Or how I was doing? Or if I was happy?" I don't know," she said quietly. I looked her in the eyes. Winning the lottery didn't change who I am. It gave me the freedom to stop needing approval I never got. Tears filled her eyes. "We were wrong. I see that now. Can't you forgive us?" "Forgiveness isn't the problem," I said softly. "I forgave you months ago. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiving someone doesn't mean letting them keep hurting you." She looked lost. "So, what do you want from us?" "Nothing," I said. "And that's exactly the point. I don't need anything from you anymore," I said calmly. "And until you truly want a relationship with me that isn't about money, status, or your idea of success, we have nothing to talk about." Just then, I heard noise near the entrance. I turned and saw Betty walking in, followed by Mom, Dad, and Paul. I sighed. "You all came here to corner me at my company's launch?" I asked. "We're desperate," Betty cried, her makeup smudged from tears. "Paul lost everything in a bad investment. The bank is taking our house. Dad's company is falling apart. Please, Margarita, you have to help us." The room went quiet. Our guests pretended not to look, but I could feel all eyes on us. I looked at my family closely. Dad looked tired and weak, no longer full of pride. Betty's fancy clothes were wrinkled and worn. Mom looked torn between holding on to pride and asking for help. "No," I said firmly. Dad's voice broke a little. "Then what do you want from us?" "I'll give you something else instead," I said, taking out my phone. I showed them a picture. "This is Kenneth Financial Services. They're looking for experienced people with good community ties. Dad, they agreed to interview you for a senior job. It's not a guarantee, but it's a real chance." I swiped to the next photo. "Betty, the local arts center needs a fundraising coordinator. You're great at planning events and working with people. You'd be perfect for it." I looked at Paul. "My friend owns a construction company. They need project managers. It's honest work and good pay." "You want us to work for someone else?" Betty asked, shocked. "I want you to stand on your own like I did," I said. "I want you to build something real. Find out who you are without borrowed money or fake titles. And if we say no?" Dad asked. "Then you'll figure something else out," I replied. "But I won't give you money just so you can keep living a life that made us all miserable." Betty stepped forward, surprised. "The art center, do they really think I'd be good at that?" "Yes," I nodded. "Because you are good at it when you're being real, not pretending to be perfect." Betty wiped her tears, her expensive mascara smearing across her face. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You do," I said, taking her hand for the first time in months. "You're smart. You're strong. Use those gifts for something that matters. Dad cleared his throat. The job interview, when is it? Tomorrow at 10, I said. And don't wear your Rolex. Show them your skills, not your pride. One by one, they nodded. They didn't look thankful, but maybe, just maybe, they understood. As they left, Mom paused and turned back. Your company, it's really amazing, Margaret. I'm sorry we never saw what you were trying to do. I know, I said softly. Maybe one day, you'll truly see me too. After they were gone, Tyler came over and stood beside me. You okay, kiddo? He asked. I looked around at my publishing house. I saw dreams coming to life, stories being shared, and lives being changed. You know what, Tyler? I said with a smile. I really am okay. Just then, Laura came running up, holding her notebook in the air. Miss Smith, she called out. Miss Carroll loved my story. She said maybe one day it could become a real book. I knelt down beside her. Do you want to know a secret, Laura? She nodded, eyes wide with excitement. Every real book starts with someone brave enough to tell their story, I said. Someone just like you. Just like all of us. Later that evening, I sat outside in the garden, in the little reading nook I had built. I was working on my own novel, the story I had been writing for years. It was quiet and peaceful. The sky was soft with stars. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Betty. I have an interview at the art center tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled and typed back. Be yourself. Your real self. Winning the lottery hadn't just given me millions of dollars. It had given me something much more important, the chance to show my family and myself what true success looks like. Not money, but the courage to be who I really am. And that, to me, was the greatest treasure of all. I was shocked when I found out that my parents had used my credit card without asking me. They spent $280,500 on a luxury trip to Europe as a graduation gift for my sister, Sophia. My name is Lauren. I'm a 27-year-old, and I've been managing my own money since I was 21, thanks to my job as a bank manager. My sister Sophia is 25 and just finished her degree in media. She has always been the favorite child. Growing up, she got more love, attention, and gifts from our parents. While Sophia got new clothes, the latest gadgets, and didn't have to do chores, I had to learn to take care of myself. I worked hard, earned scholarships, and saved money. It wasn't easy seeing the clear favoritism, but I stayed focused on my goals and tried to ignore it. But things got out of hand when my mom told me, very happily, that they had booked a fancy one-month trip to Europe for Sophia, using my credit card. She said they used my card to collect reward points and told me they would pay me back eventually. I was shocked and hurt. I told them what they did was serious and not okay. I reminded them it was illegal to use someone's card without permission, especially for such a huge amount. But they didn't take me seriously. They said I was being dramatic. I was really worried. What if I needed that credit limit in an emergency? This could mess up my finances. So I reported the charge as fraud to the bank. That caused a big fight with my family, and I decided to stop talking to them. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it to protect myself and my future. I needed that credit limit for important things, and what they did broke my trust. But instead of understanding how I felt, my mom got angry. You're so selfish, she said coldly. Why can't you just be happy for your sister? This is her special moment, and you're ruining it by being cheap. I couldn't believe it. I was being called selfish for being upset about a $280,500 charge I never agreed to. After that call, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. I hoped my dad would understand and give me a better response, but sadly, he agreed with my mom. He didn't see anything wrong with what they did. My dad agreed with my mom. He said I was making a big deal out of nothing and should be more supportive of Sophia. When I spoke to Sophia, she seemed completely unaware of the problem. She was so happy about the trip and even thanked me for helping with her graduation gift, like I had done it on purpose. It felt strange and unreal. Was I really the one being unreasonable? I was frustrated and wanted to fix things, so I called the credit card company to report the charges. But to my shock, They told me that because I had once shared my card details with my parents for emergencies, it didn't count as fraud. Now I was stuck with a $280,500 bill, a maxed-out credit card, and a family that called me selfish for not wanting to pay for Sophia's fancy trip. I felt deeply hurt and betrayed by the very people who were supposed to care for me. I didn't know what to do. One part of me wanted to cancel the trip to make a strong point, but I knew that would start a huge fight with my family. Another part of me thought about just paying the bill to avoid more drama. But I kept thinking, if I let this go, would they do it again? Would they think it was okay to keep using my money without asking? I asked myself, am I overreacting? Should I just accept this and move on? Or should I stand up for myself, even if it hurts my relationship with my family? I felt completely lost. Thank you to everyone who shared kind words and advice on my earlier post. Your support helped me see that it was okay to feel upset and that I wasn't wrong for feeling used and disrespected. Thanks to that encouragement, I decided to take more action. I called the credit card company again and explained everything clearly. I told them my parents were only supposed to use my card for emergencies, and this was definitely not one. After talking for a while, they agreed to look into it again and check if it could still be seen as fraud. Then I set up a family Zoom call. I hope we could talk things out and maybe fix the situation. The call was intense. I calmly explained what their actions meant, how serious it was, how they broke my trust, and how much pressure it had put on me financially. I told them I had reported the charges as fraud and asked them to cancel the trip right away. Their reaction was upsetting, but not surprising. They got angry and said I was being too dramatic and trying to ruin Sophia's graduation. My mom even said I was making a happy time feel sad. The problem still isn't solved, and now I'm thinking about what to do next. It's a tough choice because this has affected our family badly. My parents tried to defend their actions by saying they raised me and paid for everything when I was younger. That made me feel even more frustrated. I told them calmly, you chose to be parents. Taking care of us was your job. That doesn't give you the right to use my credit card without asking. Sophia had been quiet the whole time, but then she suddenly started crying. She said I was ruining her gift and claimed I had always been jealous of her. Her words hurt, but they also made me more sure that I needed to set clear boundaries. I said, Sophia, I'm truly proud of you and happy for your success. But this trip was charged to my card without my permission. That's not a gift from me, and it's not okay. Then my dad spoke up. He tried to make the situation seem small, saying they had access to my card for emergencies and thought it would be fine just this one time. I couldn't believe it. I told him, Dad, $280,500 is a huge amount of money. This wasn't an emergency. You can't just spend my money without asking me first. The call ended with everyone feeling emotional. My parents were upset. Sophia was crying, and I felt completely drained, but also firm in my decision. Even after everything, they still refused to cancel the trip. They said I was overreacting and promised to pay me back soon. Afterward, I spoke to a friend who's a lawyer. He told me what my parents did was illegal, and I had the right to take legal action. So I also filed a police report. The officer was kind and listened carefully. He warned me that pressing charges could damage my relationship with my family, but he also said I had every right to protect myself. Now I feel torn. I love my family, and the thought of taking legal steps against them makes me sad. But at the same time, their lack of respect for my choices and money worries me a lot. I'm scared that if I don't stand up for myself now, they might do something like this again. I've decided to wait for the results of the credit card company's investigation. To stay safe, I froze my credit so no one could use it without my permission again. This whole experience has been painful, but has also taught me something important. I now understand how necessary it is to set strong boundaries with people, even family. For a long time, I tried to keep the peace, even if it hurt me. But now I've learned to speak up for myself. It's not easy, and it still feels a bit scary, but it's also giving me strength. I'm finally standing up and saying that I won't allow anyone to break my trust again. Thank you all for your support and advice. It has helped me so much during this difficult time. I'll keep sharing updates as the investigation continues, or if anything else happens with my family. Your support has really meant a lot. It's been a few weeks since I last shared an update, and a lot has happened. First, the good news. The credit card company finished their investigation, and they agreed with me. They confirmed that the charges were not approved by me and took back the $280,500 from my account. It was a huge relief to be free from that financial burden. But then things got worse. When my parents and Sophia found out the trip was canceled because of the chargeback, they were furious. I started getting lots of angry calls and texts. My mom left a really hurtful voicemail saying I was selfish and ungrateful, and that I had ruined Sophia's special trip. Sophia even made a crying video on social media, saying her mean brother had destroyed her dream vacation. It spread quickly among our friends and family. Soon, people started asking me why I was being so cruel to my sister. When I saw how crazy things were getting, I decided I had to tell my side of the story. I wrote a calm and clear post explaining that my credit card was used without my permission and that I had tried to work things out with my family before going to the credit card company. People had mixed reactions. Some were shocked at how my parents had acted and supported me. Others said I should have just let Sophia go on the trip, even though it meant ignoring the fact that my money was used without asking me. It was surprising to see how many people believed that it's okay to ignore something wrong, just because it's family. A few days later, I got a surprise call from my aunt, my mom's sister. She said she was sorry about what I was going through and shared some family history I didn't know before. She told me that my mom has had problems with money for a long time and had taken advantage of other family members too. She told me to stay strong and said she would support me. That talk helped me understand that this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was part of a pattern that had been happening for years but ignored. I realized I had to set strong limits, not just for myself but to stop this kind of behavior from continuing. So I made a hard decision. I told my parents that I wouldn't be speaking with them for a while. I explained that I needed time to think and that I couldn't trust them right now. I also told Sophia that even though I loved her and was proud of her, I needed space from her too. Their reactions were exactly what I expected. My parents said I was breaking the family apart. Sophia cried and said I was punishing her for something she didn't do. It hurt, but I stayed strong and didn't change my mind. During all this family drama, I focused on protecting myself from any more money problems. I changed all my passwords, closed the credit card account my parents had access to, and opened a new account at a different bank. I also started seeing a therapist to help me deal with everything and to learn how to set healthier boundaries. Even though this whole thing has been really hard, something good has come out of it. I've learned to value myself more and take better care of my emotional and financial health. One unexpected benefit is that I've grown closer to my aunt and a few cousins. They reached out to support me, and it feels good to know that not everyone in the family agrees with what my parents did. I've heard through other family members that my parents are still thinking about sending Sophia on another trip. A small part of me feels bad that she didn't get to go to Europe, but I keep reminding myself it wasn't my job to pay for it. I still struggle with guilt and doubt. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh or made the wrong choice. But every time I remember how betrayed I felt when I found out what happened, I know I did the right thing. This experience has been a tough lesson, but it's taught me the importance of self-respect and setting clear boundaries. I'm learning that it's okay to say no, even to family, and that real love shouldn't come with a price. Thank you again for all your support. I'll keep sharing updates if anything major happens. For now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. It's been about a month since my last update, and I wanted to share what's happened since then. Your advice and kind words have helped me a lot during this tough time. First, about the legal situation. After thinking carefully and talking to my lawyer, I decided not to take my parents to court. It wasn't an easy choice. Many of you suggested going the legal route, and I really considered it. But my lawyer explained that since the credit card company already gave me the money back, a court case would be long, expensive, and might not work out. Instead, my lawyer sent a formal letter to my parents. It warned them that if they ever use my financial info again without asking, I'll take legal action right away. As for my family, staying out of contact with my parents and Sophia has been both difficult and helpful. It gave me space to think about everything and focus on myself. I've been going to therapy regularly, and it's helped me deal with my feelings and learn how to build better boundaries. About a month into this break, I got a surprise email from Sophia. It wasn't like her past reactions. This time, her message was calm and thoughtful. She said she had taken time to think about everything and now sees how wrong our parents were. She apologized for how she reacted at first and said she should have stood up for me. Sophia admitted she always knew there was favoritism but felt too scared and comfortable to speak up. I felt hopeful after reading her message, but decided to move slowly. We've had a few phone calls since then, and it seems like she really wants to understand how I feel. She also opened up about her own experiences with our parents and how they've handled money badly in the past. She had never shared that before. It looks like the canceled Europe trip made Sophia realize some hard truths, not just about our parents, but about herself too. My parents, on the other hand, haven't changed much. They've tried to reach out to me several times, sometimes with angry voicemails, other times with emails that made me feel guilty. One day, my mom even showed up at my apartment and made a scene in the hallway. It was hard, but I stayed calm and didn't argue. I had to do it to protect my peace of mind. The rest of the family has had mixed reactions. Some relatives have been quiet or unsure, but others, like my aunt, have been very supportive. She's not just someone I can count on. She's become one of my biggest sources of strength through all of this. Some other family members are still pressuring me to forgive my parents. They keep saying, "But they're your family." Because of this, I've had to distance myself from those relatives to keep my peace of mind. On the bright side, stepping away from all the family drama has helped me focus more on my own life. I've started a new hobby, photography, and I've been spending more time with friends who respect my limits and support me. I've also made some smart money choices. I've started saving more for retirement and building a stronger emergency fund. This whole experience reminded me how important it is to be financially independent and secure. One very special moment happened last week. I got a promotion at work along with a big raise. In the past, I might have felt like I had to tell my family and maybe even share the money. But this time, I kept it quiet and celebrated with a few close friends. I felt proud of myself, with no guilt or pressure. As for Sophia's graduation trip, my aunt told me our parents eventually sent her on a 5-week tour of Hawaii. From what I heard, Sophia had a good time. Looking ahead, I've decided to stay out of contact with my parents for at least another 6 months. I still need more time to heal and see if they can learn to respect my boundaries. With Sophia, I'm open to slowly rebuilding our relationship, but I'm being very careful and making sure to keep clear limits. This whole situation has taught me a lot, like how important it is to say no, to protect myself, and to understand what family really means. I've learned that family isn't just about blood. Real family is about love, respect, and support. The people who stood by me during all of this, my aunt, some cousins, and good friends, showed me what true family looks like. I've also become even more careful with money. I was already good at managing my finances, but now I've added more security to all my accounts. I'm also more firm about protecting my financial information, even from family members. There have been some hard moments too. I've missed a few family events because of the no-contact decision. Mother's Day was especially emotional. But when I feel sad, I remind myself that this space is helping me grow and take care of my mental health. Something unexpected and positive has come out of all this. I've been able to help others. Friends who are also dealing with money problems in their families have come to me for advice. It feels really good to be able to support them and share what I've learned through my own experiences. It's been a while since my last update, but during this time, I've grown a lot and even helped others. That's been a very rewarding feeling. My aunt recently told me that my parents are going through some tough times. It turns out they had planned to use my credit card for more than just Sophia's trip. Now there's tension between them. My dad is angry at my mom for going too far and committing credit card fraud. Even though I feel a little guilty knowing they're struggling, I keep reminding myself that their money problems are not my responsibility. Sophia also shared a bit about how her parents are dealing with everything. She said they still don't really understand why I was so upset. To them, what they did seems normal for a family, and they think I'm making a big deal out of nothing. That misunderstanding is frustrating, but it shows me that keeping my distance was the right choice. When I think back to my childhood and early adult years, I now see a pattern of emotional and financial manipulation that I used to believe was normal. Realizing this has been painful, but also freeing. I've started trusting my own feelings and choices instead of always looking for my parents' approval. On a personal note, I've started dating again. I had been holding back because of all the family drama, but recently I met someone kind, respectful, and very understanding of my situation. It's still early, but it feels good to connect with someone who truly respects my boundaries and values. I'm also thinking about making some big changes in my life. I've always wanted to get a master's degree, but I kept putting it off because I felt like I had to support my family financially. Now, I'm seriously looking into programs and considering taking that step. It feels good to finally make choices based on what's best for me and my future. As I write this, I realize how much has changed in just a few months. The shock and anger I first felt are gone. Now I feel calm and focused. I'm not just reacting to what my family did. I'm taking control and building the life I want. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want you to know, it gets better. Setting boundaries with family is hard, and people might not always understand, but it's worth it. You have the right to protect yourself, your money, and your mental health. Thank you again to everyone who supported me along the way. Your kind words and advice have been a lifeline. I don't know what will happen in the future with my parents or Sophia, but I know I'll be okay. I'm stronger now, more confident, and ready for whatever comes next. I'll share more updates if anything major happens, but for now, I'm focusing on moving forward and creating a life filled with people who respect and support me. Here's to new beginnings and lessons that made me stronger. I'm excited to share some new updates with all of you who have supported me through this journey. First, I have some big news. I've been accepted into a master's program in financial technology. The school is about 6 hours from where I live now, and the program lasts 1 year. It's a perfect fit for the career goals I've always dreamed of. I'll be starting this fall, and I feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. Making the choice to go back to school wasn't easy. It meant leaving my current job, moving to a new city, and taking out student loans. But more than anything, it means I'm finally investing in myself and my future, something I used to delay because I was always thinking about my family's needs first. Now, I'm making decisions based on what's right for me, and that feels really good. As for my family, things have taken an unexpected turn. The no-contact period with my parents ended 4 months ago, and we agreed to try family therapy with a professional counselor. The first session was tense. My parents were defensive and said they didn't do anything wrong. But as we talked more, deeper problems came out. It turned out that my dad had lost a lot of money in a bad investment. He never told anyone, not even my mom. That financial stress is what led them to use my credit card. They were trying to hide their money troubles and keep up appearances. This truth brought up a lot of emotions. My mom felt hurt that my dad kept such a big secret. My dad was ashamed of what he had done. For the first time, they seemed to understand how badly their actions affected me. Even though what they did wasn't okay, knowing the full story helped me see where they were coming from. With the therapist's help, we started to talk more honestly. By the end of the session, both of my parents gave me real, heartfelt apologies. We've decided to keep going to family therapy once a month. The road to healing is long, and it won't be easy, but these steps are helping us rebuild trust and better understand each other. I'm also slowly rebuilding my relationship with Sophia. She's doing really well now. She got a full-time job and moved into her own place. We've been talking more often, and for the first time, it feels like I'm getting to know her as an adult. She's even asked me for advice on budgeting and saving money, which is a big change and a good sign for our relationship. On a personal note, things are going really well with Diane, the woman I mentioned before. Our relationship has become something very special. She has been incredibly supportive of my decision to go back to school, even though it means we'll be in a long-distance relationship for a while. Diane has also had her own experiences with setting boundaries with her family, so she really understands what I'm going through and has been a great support. Financially, I'm in a strong place. The promotion I got earlier helped me save a good amount of money for my upcoming move and for grad school expenses. I've also become much more careful about protecting my money. Just recently, a distant relative tried to guilt me into co-signing a loan. It wasn't easy to say no, but I stood my ground, and it reminded me how important it is to keep firm personal boundaries. As I get ready to start this new chapter in my life, I've been thinking about how far I've come since that first shocking phone call from my mom about the credit card charges. The pain and anger I felt back then have mostly faded. Now, I feel stronger and more confident in myself. This whole experience has taught me how important it is to set and stick to boundaries, especially with family. I've learned that it's okay to put my well-being and future first. True family, whether it's blood relatives or chosen friends, will support your growth and respect your space. To everyone who followed my story and gave advice and support, thank you. Your words helped me stay strong and clear-headed during some very hard times. And to anyone out there going through similar problems with family, know that it's possible to come out stronger and wiser. As I pack up my apartment and get ready for this new adventure, I feel hopeful and excited in a way I haven't felt in years. I'm proud of how far I've come, and I'm looking forward to what comes next. Hi, I'm Emma Watson, and this is the story of how my love for baking helped me discover what real success means, and also showed me the ugly side of prejudice within my husband's wealthy family. For 4 years, I lived a double life. During the day, I happily ran my cozy little bakery in the neighborhood. People came in for fresh bread, cinnamon rolls, and warm conversations. But at night, I switched roles. I secretly managed one of the most successful restaurant chains in the country. Nobody knew that I was the person behind it, not even my husband. I met Thierry Henry one morning outside my bakery. He was kind, down-to-earth, and really interested in my dream of owning a bakery. He wasn't like the usual rich people I'd met before. He didn't look down on small businesses. When he finally told me that his family owned the famous Henry Financial Group, I was shocked. But still, Thierry felt different. He enjoyed my simple cinnamon rolls more than any fancy meal. What he didn't know, and what I never told anyone, was that I had already built something big. 11 years ago, I started a restaurant brand called Bellissimo Bistro using my grandmother's Italian recipes and a small loan. It started with one small place, but slowly grew into 20 restaurants all across the country. Each location stayed true to our family's cooking and cozy style. I ran everything through a holding company, keeping my name out of the spotlight. For me, it was always about the food and the people, not the fame. Things changed after Thierry and I got married. His family, especially his mother Amy, never took my bakery seriously. At family dinners, she would make little remarks. "Surely now that you're a Henry," she would say, swirling her wine, "you'll give up that little bakery. It doesn't suit our image." I would smile and stay quiet, all while secretly working on expanding Bellissimo Bistro to even more cities. The biggest twist? The Henry family, including Amy, loved eating at my restaurants. In fact, Amy often held her business dinners at our flagship location. She even bragged about how close she was to the mysterious owner, never knowing that owner was me. Everything came crashing down at Thanksgiving dinner this year. We were all gathered at the Henry Mansion, and Amy was in full bragging mode. She had just hosted a charity event at my restaurant, Bella Cusina, and wouldn't stop talking about it. "It's such a classy place," she gushed. "So exclusive and elegant. Not like those little bakeries that write on sidewalk chalkboards." She said it while staring straight at me. I just sat there, smiling quietly, knowing something she didn't. I owned both the bakery she looked down on and the restaurant she proudly claimed as her own. I kept my eyes on my plate, quietly eating while my mind was on something else, an exciting contract I had just signed earlier that morning. Bellissimo's, my restaurant chain, was finally going international. It was a huge moment in my career, but no one at the dinner table had any idea. Especially not Amy, my mother-in-law, who was just getting warmed up with her usual comments. "Let's be real," Amy said, waving her hand dramatically. "We're talking about a real culinary empire here. This is what a real business looks like, Emma, not some little bakery selling cupcakes to children." Thierry's father, Nathan, joined in. "She's right. Running a serious restaurant business is not easy. It takes real skills, connections, investment, proper education. It's not something you can handle with a few recipes and a smile. I felt Thierry sit up a little straighter beside me, tense and clearly uncomfortable, but I gently squeezed his hand under the table to calm him. I was used to these jabs. For 4 years, I had heard comments like this at almost every family event. It used to hurt. But now, I had bigger things to think about, like the major announcement Bellissimo's was going to make tomorrow. Amy, still full of energy, suddenly smiled.
Oh.
Speaking of serious businesses, I've invited the owner of Bella Cucina to speak at the Henry Foundation dinner next month. They never appear in public, but surely they won't turn me down. I'm one of their best customers, after all. Then Thierry's sister Olivia added one last blow. Well, at least now we won't have to listen to boring bakery stories at these dinners anymore. Let's keep our conversations about real businesses from now on. Everyone around the table laughed politely. Thierry opened his mouth to speak up, but I had already made up my mind. I couldn't sit there in silence any longer. For 4 years, I had hidden my success. I had smiled through their rude remarks and watched them praise Bella Cucina, completely unaware that I was the one behind it. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and sent a text I had saved for just the right moment. Somewhere across the city, my executive team was about to launch something called Protocol Henry, a plan I had designed for this exact situation. You're right, Olivia, I said softly, standing up. Let's talk about real business. In fact, why don't we meet again tomorrow? How about brunch at Bella Cucina, in the private owner's dining room? Amy's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, Emma, you can't just book that room. It's for the owner only, very exclusive. I smiled, picked up my purse, and looked her right in the eye. Trust me, I said. We have a table reserved. I walked out of the mansion, leaving behind a room full of confused faces and one quiet, satisfied smile from Thierry. He had discovered my secret 7 months ago and had patiently waited for this day to come. As I stepped into the cool night air, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow's brunch would be unforgettable. In fact, I had a feeling it would be the most important event Bella Cucina had ever hosted. Some moments in life, just like certain meals, are best served cold. The next morning, I arrived at Bellissimo's main location 3 hours before the scheduled brunch. The restaurant looked different in the early hours. It was calm, quiet, and filled with possibility. As I walked through the kitchen, the sound of my heels echoed on the shiny floors. The staff, busy with prep work, looked up in surprise. They were used to seeing me in chef's clothes or casual wear, not in the sharp Chanel suit I had chosen for this special day. Is everything ready for Protocol Henry? I asked with a small smile. Tyler, my executive chef who had been with me for 9 years, nodded and grinned. Already working on the special menu, he said. I can't wait to see their faces when they taste your Helen's original tiramisu. At exactly 10 a.m., the Henry family arrived. Amy led the way, holding her head high as if she were royalty. She walked confidently up to the maitre d' and said proudly, "We're here for brunch with the owner. I'm Amy Henry." "Of course, Mrs. Henry," said Adam, my longtime maitre d'. He kept his face calm and professional. "Right this way, please. I'll take you to the owner's private dining room." He led them through the elegant main dining area, past the wine cellar I had personally designed and stocked over the years, and up to the private floor. Thierry came in separately and caught my eye as he entered. He gave me a small smile, clearly enjoying what was about to happen. The private dining room was my favorite place in the whole restaurant. It was filled with special memories, photos of every Bella Cucina location, awards we had won, and most importantly, a large portrait of my grandmother standing proudly in her first restaurant in Rome. She had taught me everything. Amy stepped into the room and immediately looked at the head of the table. The chair was empty. "Will the owner be joining us soon?" she asked, gently smoothing her expensive blouse. I stepped forward and smiled, feeling years of silence and patience finally come to a beautiful end. "The owner is already here," I said softly. "Welcome to my restaurant." "I'm the owner," I said quietly, stepping out of the shadows. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Amy's face changed so quickly, it was like watching a scene in a movie. First came confusion, then disbelief, followed by shock, and finally, pure horror. Nathan, her husband, dropped his expensive designer glasses in surprise. Olivia, Thierry's sister, opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. She just sat there, blinking like a fish out of water. "This has to be a joke," Amy finally said, her voice shaky. You run a bakery." I smiled calmly and walked over to the head of the table, taking my seat with confidence. "I do run a bakery," I said. "But I also run several other businesses. Bella Cucina is just the most well-known one." I reached for the small remote beside my plate and pressed a button. A large screen came down from the ceiling. On it, the financial overview of Bella Cucina appeared, clear and bold. It showed everything: 20 locations across the country, over $200 million in yearly revenue, and our upcoming international expansion. "That's not possible," Nathan whispered. But his trained banker's eyes were already scanning the numbers, and I could tell he knew the truth. He couldn't deny it. "Let me tell you a little story," I said, smiling warmly as I nodded to the staff to start serving the food. "It all began with my grandmother's small restaurant in Rome. That's where I learned that great food isn't just about ingredients. It's about love, family, and tradition." As each course was brought to the table, I explained its meaning. The appetizer was based on my grandmother's homemade bread recipe. The pasta was the very first dish I learned to cook as a child. And the main course? That was the signature recipe that helped launch Bella Cucina 11 years ago. "I took those recipes and a dream," I continued, "and I built something amazing. The bakery came later. It was just a side project that let me stay connected to people and do what I love with my hands." Amy just stared at her plate. Her fork hadn't moved. Her food was untouched. She looked stunned. "All those times you bragged about knowing the owner," I said gently, "you really did know me. You just didn't believe I was someone worth knowing." Thierry reached for my hand under the table and gave it a gentle squeeze. He looked proud of me, proud of the truth finally coming out. He had found out my secret 7 months earlier during a surprise visit to my office. But instead of being angry, he was amazed and secretly amused by his family's ignorance. "But why keep it all a secret?" Olivia asked. Her voice no longer had that arrogant tone. She sounded genuinely curious now. "Because real success," I said with a soft smile, "isn't about being noticed. It's about doing what you love, staying true to yourself, and letting the results speak for you." I smiled and replied, "For me, it's always been about creating something that truly matters. Every time someone celebrates a birthday, an anniversary, or even a quiet moment in one of our restaurants, it means something to me. Every time a food critic praises our food for being real and full of heart, it means more than any personal award. And every time your mother bragged to others about our great service, without knowing I was the one behind it, that meant everything." Right then, Adam, our maitre d', walked into the room holding a white envelope. He handed it to me. "The documents you requested, Mrs. Watson-Henry," he said respectfully. I opened the envelope and slid the papers across the table to Amy and Nathan. "This," I said, looking around the table, "is why I invited you here today." They looked at me, puzzled. "Bella Cucina is expanding," I continued. "We're going international, and we're looking for new investors. As per the agreement, the Henry Financial Group has the first chance to accept or reject the offer." Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the papers and started reading. His eyes quickly scanned the proposal. The numbers were clear and impressive. The potential profits were huge. Amy's face turned pale. She looked like she couldn't decide if she was shocked, embarrassed, or both. "You're offering us this chance?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "Even after how we treated you?" I stood up and walked over to the large portrait of my grandmother, hanging on the wall. "You once told me that the restaurant business required class, connections, and big money," I said, turning back to them. "But you were wrong. What it really takes is passion, honesty, and a dream. And I added with a small smile. It also takes the ability to see an opportunity, even if it doesn't come in the package you expected. As they sat in silence, trying to take everything in, I nodded to the staff to bring out the final course. It was our classic tiramisu, made from my grandmother's original recipe. The same dessert Amy had raved about for years, never knowing it came from the woman she once called just a baker. I sat down again and looked around the table. The real question is, I said, folding my hands neatly in front of me, are you ready to be part of a real business? The room went quiet. The only sound was the soft clinking of silverware as Thierry enjoyed his dessert, a proud smile on his face. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. He looked down at the financial report again, then back up at me. All this time, he said, his voice cracking, we thought we were the ones giving you advice about business, but you were the one quietly building an empire. I finished his sentence for him. Yes, I was building something big. But today isn't about making anyone feel bad or embarrassed. It's about looking ahead, as a family and maybe even as business partners. I picked up the small remote and pressed another button. The screen on the wall changed again, showing new images. This time, it was beautiful designs and building plans for new Bella Cucina locations in Manchester, Nantes, and Munich. More slides followed, showing market research, profit predictions, and plans for global growth. This next step will need a lot of investment, I explained. Bella Cucina is ready to go international. The Henry Financial Group has the kind of worldwide connections that could help us. But I paused and looked around the table, making eye contact with each family member. If we're going to work together, we'll need to change how we treat each other. Respect is the foundation of any partnership. Amy slowly placed her spoon on her plate. Her hands were shaking just a little. Why would you even offer us this chance? She asked softly. Not after the way we've treated you. I looked at her and smiled gently. Because success, without people to share it with, feels empty, I said, thinking of my grandmother's warm kitchen and the lessons she taught me. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong, it's giving them a chance to prove themselves right. That's when Olivia, who had been mostly quiet until now, let out a laugh. Not her usual polite and polished laugh, but a real, honest one. All those times we lectured you about how business works, she said between laughs, and you were probably sitting there calculating global market strategies in your head. Her laughter broke the heavy mood in the room. Even Amy smiled, although her eyes shimmered with tears. Nathan was still studying the financial papers in front of him. His face was slowly changing, from shock to respect. These numbers are incredible, he said, almost to himself. Your profits, your growth, and you did all of this without big investors or outside money? I nodded. Every Bella Cucina restaurant was built with reinvested earnings. No bank loans, no investors, just smart decisions, great food, and my grandmother's recipes. Amy looked at me and asked softly, but the bakery? Why keep running it when you have all of this? I smiled, thinking of the smell of fresh bread, the happy faces of kids pressing their noses to the glass display, waiting for cookies. The bakery keeps me grounded, I said. It reminds me why I started all this. Not just for money, but for love. Every cupcake I sell means something. It brings joy to people. That joy matters just as much as any 5-star review Bellissimo Bistro receives. Thierry gently took my hand and looked at his family. That's what I fell in love with, he said. Not just her success, but her heart. I didn't even know all of this was happening behind the scenes. But now I realize everything that made Bella Cucina successful, like passion, honesty, and staying true to myself, was the same thing my husband's family had once ignored or looked down on. That day completely changed how our family worked together. Nathan, the serious and sharp-minded banker, finally saw me not just as Thierry's wife or a woman who ran a bakery, but as a strong businesswoman. We spent hours together that afternoon talking about how to expand the brand around the world. He even gave me helpful advice about international markets and business strategies. Olivia, with her background in marketing, got excited right away. She began sharing fun and fresh ideas for launching Bella Cucina as a global brand. Her energy lit up the room. And then there was Amy. To everyone's surprise, She quietly said, "I want to learn how to bake." She wiped tears from her eyes and added, "I want to understand how you built something so amazing from just flour, sugar, and dreams." Over the next year, everything changed. The Henry Financial Group became an official partner in Bella Cusina's international journey. But even more important than business was what happened to our family. Amy started showing up at my bakery every Sunday morning. She put on an apron, tied her hair back, and worked beside me to learn how to make croissants and other pastries. Slowly, she began to see what I had always known. Being a baker wasn't less than. It was something beautiful, something real. Nathan stopped talking about proper family image and social class. Instead, he started talking about how real success comes from heart, not just money. Today, Bella Cusina has 40 locations in countries around the world. In our original restaurant, there's now a wall of family photos, including one of Amy, smiling proudly as she holds up the first batch of cookies she made on her own. The bakery still opens early every morning, and I still make time each week to be there. I roll dough, knead bread, and connect with customers. That little shop reminds me where it all began. Last month, when we opened our Nantes location, Amy stood right next to me as I cut the ribbon. She leaned in and whispered, "I was so wrong. Success isn't about how things look on the outside. It's about having the bravery to follow your passion, even if others don't understand it." I gently squeezed her hand, thinking about how far we'd come. "Sometimes," I said, "real success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about giving them the chance to grow and change." Thierry stood a few feet away, smiling, probably remembering that unforgettable Thanksgiving dinner when everything shifted. Now, our family gatherings are different. We still talk about business, but we also laugh, bake, share stories, and taste Amy's newest pastries. And me? I'm still living the dream that started with one simple recipe and a whole lot of heart. I run a large business now, an empire, some might say. Bella Cusina has grown beyond what I ever imagined. We have restaurants across the country and even around the world. There are meetings to attend, contracts to sign, and big decisions to make every day. But even with all that, I still wake up early every morning just like I did in the beginning. I go to my little bakery, roll up my sleeves, and start baking.
Why?
Because to me, success was never about becoming rich or famous. It was never about choosing between being a small business owner or a big name in the food world. It was always about staying true to what I love, baking, creating, and connecting with people through food. Baking at dawn reminds me of where I started. It reminds me of my grandmother, who taught me that real joy comes from putting love into your work. Whether I'm making one loaf of bread or opening a new restaurant in another country, the heart behind it is the same. To be successful doesn't mean you have to forget your roots. You don't have to give up the simple things to achieve something great. In fact, staying humble, honest, and passionate is what makes real success possible. It's not about being small or big. It's about holding on to what matters most and letting it guide you through everything life brings. Sometimes life brings surprises. People who once doubted you might change. They may have looked down on you before, thinking you were just a baker or not good enough. But one day, they might stand beside you, finally seeing the truth that was always there. They might even want to learn from you. And that, to me, is just as meaningful as any award or profit report. The best part about building something beautiful is watching how it brings people together. A successful recipe is not just about one ingredient. It's about how all the different pieces, flour, sugar, thyme, and care, blend together to create something wonderful. The same goes for life and success. It's not just about talent or money or connections. It's about love, hard work, kindness, and believing in yourself even when others don't. It's about making room for change, for yourself and for those around you. When I look back at everything, where I started, what I built, and how far we've come as a family, I feel proud. Not just of the business, but of the story behind it. The story that says success isn't one thing. It's a mix, like a good recipe. And when everything comes together just right, it creates something unforgettable. Just like the best dishes. Just like the best stories. I'm sorry, but your name isn't on the guest list. Her words hit me hard, like someone had slapped me. I just stood there, holding my purse tightly, my breath caught in my throat. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly straight blonde hair and a fake polite smile, looked at me with what felt like pity. I hated that look. There must be some mistake, I said, forcing a small, polite smile. I kept my voice calm, but inside, I felt something twist. The bride is my sister. She paused, her fingers hovering over the paper. She looked at me, then back down at the list, scanning the names again. But I had already seen it in her face, that quick flicker of doubt. She wasn't going to find my name. My stomach sank. Can you please check again? I asked, gripping the gift bag tighter in my hand. She nodded quickly and flipped through the pages like she might have missed something the first time. Every second felt longer than the last. I could hear soft music and the clinking of glasses coming from the ballroom behind me. Then her face changed. I recognized that look. It was the kind people had right before giving bad news. She spoke softly, almost like she felt bad for me. I'm really sorry, Miss Harrier, but your name just isn't here. I took a deep breath, trying to keep it together. That can't be right, I said. Betty is my sister. I have to be on that list. She glanced around like she was checking to see if anyone else was listening. Then, in a voice so quiet I could barely hear it, she said, "It wasn't a mistake. Your mother asked us to take your name off the list." All I could hear now was the sound of my own heartbeat rushing in my ears. I stared at her, sure I had misunderstood. "I'm sorry, what?" She looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "Your mother told the event team not to let you in no matter what," she said quietly. I really am sorry." She sounded like she didn't know what else to say. Awkward. That's the word she used. My own mother had purposely erased me from my sister's wedding, and all this girl could call it was awkward? A cold, empty feeling spread through me, pushing out the first sting of pain. "I see," I said quietly, swallowing hard. But I didn't really understand. Not completely. Yes, my mom always liked Betty more. That was obvious. But cutting me out completely? Acting like I didn't exist on one of the biggest days in our family's life? Even for her, this was a new kind of hurt. I stood still for a moment, my heart pounding so loudly it filled my ears. I thought about turning around, going inside, and demanding answers. I could walk into that ballroom and make a scene. But what would that do? My mom would act shocked and pretend she didn't know anything. Would Betty look at me, surprised, realizing what happened too late? Or worse, what if she already knew and didn't care? I pushed that thought away. I wasn't going to embarrass myself in front of all these people. It was clear I wasn't wanted here.
So, I wasn't going to stay.
I looked down at the gift in my hands. It was a soft white blanket I had made myself, with tiny blue flowers stitched into it. It took me 3 months to finish. The colors matched the blanket our dad gave to our mom as a wedding gift. It used to be a symbol of love and family. Now, that same family had shut me out like I didn't matter. Slowly, I walked over to the check-in counter. The concierge stared at me with curious eyes, trying not to show it too much. "Please make sure the bride gets this," I said, placing the bag gently on the table. The card tied to it was simple. "For Betty, wishing you happiness." That was all. I adjusted my purse strap and turned toward the large glass doors that led outside. As soon as my heels clicked on the marble floor, I could feel it. People were watching me. Some whispered. The weight of shame pressed down on my chest. But I kept walking. I stood tall, trying not to let it show. Outside, the night air hit my skin, cool and sharp. The street buzzed with the soft noise of cars passing by. Headlights flashed across the sidewalk. From a nearby rooftop bar, laughter and clinking glasses floated into the air. People were celebrating. But not me. I was never meant to be part of that celebration. I took a deep breath. My hands shook a little as I reached into my purse for my phone. Really, I shouldn't have been shocked. This wasn't the first time my mom had made me feel invisible. Growing up, I was always the one people forgot. Betty was the favorite, the perfect one. I was the serious one. The one whose career wasn't flashy enough. The one who had to put her own dreams aside to take care of our dad when he got sick. I had used my savings to help Betty get through law school. And after our dad passed away, I honestly thought maybe my mom and I had finally started to connect. But love in our family was never just love. It always came with conditions. And I was never seen as good enough. I let out a short breath and held my phone tightly. My finger hovered over Betty's number. Did she know? Did she realize I had been left out of her wedding? That our mom had decided I wasn't important enough to be there? I paused. Then, before I could change my mind, I tapped the screen and called her. The phone rang once. Then twice. A third time. Then it went to voicemail. She didn't even pick up. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then shoved the phone back into my purse. I should have expected that. Maybe Betty was just busy. Maybe she didn't know what Mom had done. Or maybe she knew the whole time. That thought made my stomach twist. I turned away from the hotel and stepped toward the curb to call a cab. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. But one thing was clear. If they had pushed me out of their lives, I would make sure they regretted it. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. The cab ride home felt like a blur. City lights flashed by outside the window. Neon signs lit up the streets in colors, but I hardly noticed. My fingers tapped against my purse, my thoughts racing with questions and what-ifs. I could still hear the receptionist's voice. Your mother personally asked to have your name removed. I breathed out slowly, my chest tight, and rested my forehead against the cold window. My mom hadn't just left me out of a wedding. She had erased me from what family was supposed to mean. And the worst part? I should have seen it coming. My mom, Laura Harrier, had never hidden the fact that I was a burden to her. Betty had always been the favorite, the perfect daughter who never made mistakes, the one who did everything right. She went to the best schools, got a fancy law degree, and was marrying someone with a big name. And me? I was always the second choice. The girl who chose nursing, which wasn't glamorous enough for my mom. The daughter who spent her best years taking care of our dying dad instead of chasing big dreams. I was never enough for her. But what hurt the most wasn't just that she favored Betty. It was the truth I was just now starting to see. I wasn't simply forgotten. I had been removed on purpose. I took out my phone and started scrolling through old messages. Texts from years ago that suddenly felt different. Hey, I sent you a birthday gift. Let me know if you got it. Thinking of you today. Let's catch up soon. Read at 8:30 p.m. No reply. Hope the bar exam went well. I'm so proud of you. Never delivered. For years, I told myself Betty was just busy. Law school work. It must have been a lot for her. But now I wondered, what if she never got those texts? What if Mom had been blocking everything, keeping me far from Betty's life? What if I had become just a ghost of a sister, someone she barely remembered? I shoved my phone back into my purse, fighting the sick feeling rising in my throat. I needed to stop wondering and start finding the truth. And I knew exactly where to begin. As soon as I got home, I went straight to my bookshelf. Hidden between old medical books and half-read novels was a small wooden box. I pulled it down with steady hands, even though my chest felt like it was on fire. Inside were neatly folded papers, receipts, bank statements, and copies of every check I had written for Betty over the years. I had paid for her tuition. I covered her rent when she was struggling in law school. I even bought her textbooks. I gave up my savings, my safety, and my own plans, all so she could have a better life. And in return, they erased me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I didn't want to waste my energy on emotions that wouldn't help me. This wasn't just about being hurt. This was about being robbed. I placed the box on my desk and opened my laptop. If my mother had worked this hard to erase me, I was going to make sure she would never forget what she did. I didn't want revenge just to get even. I wanted truth. I wanted fairness. I wanted my mother to finally understand. I'm not someone who disappears quietly. So I started searching. I went through financial records, digging deep into bank statements. I tracked every dollar I had sent to Betty. I looked at emails, old messages from Mom back when she still acted like I was part of the family. I opened legal files, including one I had saved after my father passed away, the file that listed his life insurance payout. And that's when I found it. A large deposit. Money that was supposed to come to me from my dad's insurance. But it had never shown up in my account. My heart stopped as I clicked further. The money had been sent somewhere else. Signed over to a different name, Laura Harrier. My mother. My stomach turned. She didn't just take my money. She stole my future. She stole the one thing Dad had left for me.
She didn't just take dollars.
She took away my chances, my freedom, my ability to build something for myself. And worst of all, she used it. For what? To give Betty the perfect life. All to keep the perfect Harrier family image alive. My hands tightened into fists. I had spent years feeling guilty, thinking I chose this life, believing I gave up everything for Betty because I wanted to. But now I saw the truth. I was never given a choice at all. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I kept searching for answers. I called my bank. I looked through credit reports. I reached out to an old accountant my dad used to trust. Little by little, the full truth started to come together. The life insurance money that was meant for me, it was sent somewhere else. The college fund I had helped build for Betty, completely emptied, without my knowledge. All those birthday gifts, letters, and messages I sent Betty over the years, they were never delivered. My mother, Laura Harrier, had worked for years to erase me, to make me invisible. I was nothing more than a bank machine to her. No voice, no place in the family, no value. And now she had done the final thing. She made sure I wasn't even invited to the wedding. The one day that was supposed to be about family and togetherness. She erased me completely. But what she didn't know was that I had just found everything I needed to tear her fake story apart. I stared at my laptop. All the evidence was right there on the screen. And it felt powerful, like holding a loaded weapon. Now I could finally show the truth. To Betty, to the wedding guests, to the world my mother worked so hard to impress. I could destroy the image she built with just one email. But I wasn't going to rush it. She took years to lie and cover things up. I would take my time revealing the truth. And when the moment came, when she least expected it, I'd make sure Laura Harrier knew what it felt like to be forgotten, to be treated like nothing. Because the one thing she never saw coming was this. I don't just disappear. I fight back. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, the light casting strange shadows on the wall around me. Everything was right there. Every wire transfer, every stolen deposit, every dollar of my father's life insurance that was supposed to be mine, taken by my own mother. Laura Harrier had carefully planned my removal from the family. And now, she was probably smiling, thinking she had won, that I had finally faded away for good. But she was wrong. I had always known she was cold. But now, I saw how far she would go to look perfect in public, wearing her fake smile like a fancy coat, waiting for people to admire her. I didn't even have to wonder where she was. The morning after the wedding, I knew exactly where she'd be. Sitting at brunch at the Club Weidendam, acting like nothing ever happened. Her favorite place for rich women to gossip. The kind of place women like Laura loved. In her world, reputation was everything. It was like the air they breathed, the money they spent, and the weapon they used to protect their perfect image. And me? I had always been the stain she tried to erase. I could already picture her sitting there, looking perfect in her cream-colored cashmere outfit, pearls shining in the morning light as she sipped her expensive tea. Surrounded by her usual group, all smiling and nodding, talking about Betty's perfect wedding. Talking about how happy Laura must be that everything went smoothly. Talking about how sad it was that I had chosen not to attend. I clenched my jaw. The anger burned inside me. Laura had always been untouchable. She built her power with lies, stolen money, and manipulation. But every castle has cracks. And I was about to find hers. By noon, I had collected everything I needed. Bank records, money transfers, financial papers. Even old emails she had once carelessly sent me. Just enough for me to connect the dots. But I wasn't going to take her down in anger. That wasn't my way. I was going to let her feel safe first, and then I'd take it all away from her. I picked up my phone and, for the first time in months, I called my mother. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was calm and smooth, like she had already planned what to say.
Barbara.
I wasn't expecting your call. Of course not. She thought she had erased me for good. I thought it was time we talked, I said, keeping my tone steady. Maybe we could meet? There was a pause. I heard the quiet sound of her sipping tea. Meet? Whatever for. To clear the air, I said. I let those words hang there, just long enough for her to feel unsure. Laura loved control, but she also loved the idea of winning. And right now, she believed she had already won. So, just like I expected, she said yes. Fine, she said, her voice cold and sharp. Let's meet. I got to the Club Weidendam first. It looked just how I remembered. Fancy, old, full of secrets hidden behind white tablecloths and overpriced drinks. When Laura walked in, she looked like she was glowing. Her walk, her smile, everything about her said she felt powerful. Barbara, she said, sitting down across from me with perfect ease. She didn't hug me. She didn't even pretend to. You look well, she added. But the look in her eyes said she expected me to look ruined, broken. Instead, I smiled. So do you? I lied. I let her enjoy the moment. Let her believe that she had won, that I was here to ask for forgiveness, to make peace on her terms. I gave her exactly 10 minutes to enjoy that lie. Then I broke it. You know, I said, placing my phone gently on the table. I never really thought you'd cut me out completely. Laura raised an eyebrow and took a sip of her tea. You cut yourself out, darling, she said calmly. You were always the difficult one. That's how she explained everything. That's how she made herself feel right. Stealing from me, lying to me, pushing me out of the family. She called it discipline. She said it was a lesson I needed. But I knew the truth now. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I slid it across the table toward her. Her face stayed calm at first, until she looked down, until she saw what it was. A copy of the life insurance payment. The one that was meant for me, but sent to her instead. The color drained from her face. I tilted my head slightly, watching her body tense up, her fingers tightening around the teacup, as if holding on to her calm could fix everything. That money was supposed to be mine, I said softly but firmly. Dad wanted me to have it. She didn't answer right away, but I saw something change in her eyes. The pride, the arrogance. It flickered. I did what was best for the family, she finally said, but her voice didn't sound as strong anymore. No, I replied, leaning in just a little. You did what was best for you. And then, for the first time, I saw something rare in her. It wasn't fear of me. It was fear of losing control. Because she knew I had the power now. I could ruin her reputation. I'm not here to argue, Mother, I said, keeping my eyes on her. I'm here to give you a choice. She scoffed, trying to act like it didn't bother her. A choice? Yes, I said, my voice steady. Either you fix what you broke, or I will. I let the silence fill the space between us. Let her feel the weight of what I just said. Because I wasn't lying. I had proof. Enough to make sure that everyone in her fancy social group would know exactly who she really was. She could try to fight it. She could tell another lie. But deep down, she knew the truth. This time, she couldn't win. Her hand shook a little as she reached for her tea. She covered it well, but I saw it. I saw the moment Laura Harrier realized she had lost control. Fine, she finally said, her voice thin and cold. What do you want? I smiled. Now we were getting somewhere. Laura Harrier had spent her whole life controlling stories, twisting the truth so people believed her lies. She thought her power would last forever, but not anymore. She believed her reputation could never be touched, that she could twist the truth however she wanted. She was wrong, and today, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. She stared at me from across the table, her perfectly done nails pressing against the edge of the paper. It was the proof I had given her. The life insurance payout that was meant for me, but had somehow ended up at her bank account. Her face gave nothing away, but I knew her too well. The tightness in her jaw. The slow, steady breaths. She was thinking fast, trying to decide what move to make. Should she lie? Should she play innocent again? I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch out between us like a rope she was slowly choking on. Then she placed the paper down, folded her hands, and gave me a cold, fake smile. "You're being dramatic, Barbara." A laugh rose in my throat. I didn't expect her to break down right away. But calling this dramatic? Even with clear proof in front of her? Dramatic. I repeated, tilting my head. "Mom, you took money that legally belonged to me. How is that dramatic?" She looked at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "I did what I had to do," she said smoothly. "Your father left things in a mess. There were bills, responsibilities. I did what was best for the family." "No," I said, calmly but firmly. "You did what was best for you." I saw a flash of anger in her eyes. Her calm mask started to slip. "Let's be honest," I said, leaning in just a little. "You never thought I'd find out, did you?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That silence told me everything. She had counted on me staying quiet, staying small. She had spent years making me feel invisible. She never imagined a version of me that would stand up to her. "So," she finally said, clearing her throat and forcing another smile. "What exactly do you want?" It was the same line she used before, but this time, there was fear in her voice. I didn't answer right away. I let her sit with that fear. Let her feel what it was like to not be in control. "I want my money," I said clearly. "Every last cent." She scoffed. "You can't be serious." I pulled out another sheet of paper and slid it across the table. It was a legal demand letter from a lawyer I had contacted the night before. It listed everything she had taken. It included all the proof. And it explained the legal consequences if she didn't pay it back. Her eyes moved quickly over the page. She tried to keep a straight face, but I saw her hands shake slightly as she placed the letter down. "You'd really go through with this?" she asked, her voice softer now. "You left me no choice," I said. Then came silence. A heavy, long pause where I saw the truth finally hit her. This wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. She could still try to fight me. She could try to slow things down. But in the end, she would lose. And for someone like Laura Harrier, losing was her biggest fear. She didn't say yes that day. She didn't agree right away. But I saw it in her eyes. She was struggling. Because this wasn't just about money. If I made it public, if I went to court, it wouldn't just cost her financially. It would ruin her image. And for my mother, her reputation meant more than any amount of money. The next day, I got a text from Betty. "Betty, Mom's acting strange.
Keeps asking about you. What's going on?"
I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "Me." She finally got caught. A moment later, she replied again. "Betty, caught doing what?"
"What are you talking about?"
"Me." Ask her. Because if there was one thing Laura had never planned for, it was her perfect daughter learning the truth. And I was ready to let that happen. It only took 4 days. 4 days for everything to fall apart. 4 days before Betty showed up at my door, angry and demanding answers. 4 days before the walls my mother built began to collapse. "Tell me she's lying," Betty said, holding the papers I gave her. They showed every payment for her school, every gift. All of it paid from the money that had been stolen from me. "Tell me Mom didn't do this." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to, because deep down she already knew. I watched as it sank in, the truth hitting her like a wave. A lifetime of lies falling apart right in front of her. "She always told me you just disappeared," Betty whispered. "She said you didn't care, that you were too busy for us." I clenched my jaw. "Yeah," I said. "And what do you believe now?" She held the papers tighter. "I believe you." And just like that, Laura lost her favorite child. Betty was the one who went to her. I didn't need to be there. I already knew how it would play out. Laura would deny it, twist the story, pretend to be the victim. But Betty wasn't the same person she was a week ago. And the moment she looked our mother in the eye and said, "I know what you did," it was over. Laura's power was never real. It only worked because people believed she was too perfect to question. Once that belief broke, so did she. By the end of the week, I had my money back. Laura fought it. She delayed, begged, even offered me hush money to stay quiet. But I said no, because this was never just about money. It was about making her face the truth and lose the one thing she cared about most. Her perfect image. Now Betty knew, and soon everyone else would too. I didn't have to destroy her. She did it to herself. She did that to herself. I was no longer foolish enough to believe Laura would ever change. People like her don't change, they just find new ways to control others. New people to lie to, new stories to tell. But this time, she had no one left. When I saw Betty walk away from her, when I saw the fear in my mother's eyes as she realized she had truly lost, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. She had tried to erase me. She stole from me. She changed the past to make me feel like I didn't matter. But in the end, she was the one who became nothing. And me? I finally got to start fresh, the way I wanted, without her. Laura Harrier had spent her whole life building a false image. She acted like the perfect mother, the grieving widow, a classy woman who could do no wrong. But the thing about fake images? They only work if no one looks too closely. And now, everyone was looking. The cracks in her perfect world didn't just grow, they exploded. It started small. People whispered behind her back. Friends stopped calling. Invitations were ignored. And in the world she lived in, that was the worst thing of all. She used to be admired, respected. Now she was something else. A scandal. Betty stopped answering her calls. Even the wedding guests had heard the rumors. At the Club Weidendam, the same place where my mother was once treated like royalty, she suddenly had no seat. No welcome. She had spent years building power and influence, and it took less than a week to lose it all. I thought I would feel proud. But watching her lose everything, piece by piece, didn't feel as good as I expected, because I realized something. She was already empty. She had tried so hard to erase me, to control Betty, that when we walked away, she had nothing left. No family, no power, no one. For a while I thought I wanted revenge. But what I really wanted was freedom. Once my inheritance was returned, I could have done anything. I could have left the city. I could have walked away forever. The same way my mother had tried to erase me from her life. But I didn't. Instead, I rebuilt my life the way it was meant to be. I moved into a new apartment, one I could afford without worry. I left the stressful hospital job and accepted a position at a private clinic where I felt appreciated. I traveled. I read books. I lived, really lived, for the first time in my life. I started choosing things for me, not to please anyone, not to sacrifice, just because I wanted to. Betty took longer to heal, and I didn't blame her. She had spent her whole life under our mother's control, believing every lie she was told. It takes time to unlearn that. But slowly, Betty began to see who our mother really was. At first, it was small things. She paused before answering Mom's calls. She stopped defending her all the time. Then one evening, Betty showed up at my apartment. She stood at my door, hands in the pockets of her fancy coat. "I can't believe I didn't see it before," she said quietly, her voice tired and honest. I let her in, made us some coffee. And for the first time in years, we talked like real sisters. Not as two women stuck in a rivalry. Not as Laura Harrier's daughters. Just Barbara and Betty. The last time I saw my mother wasn't something I planned. I was walking through the city on a cool fall morning. The air smelled like coffee and leaves. Then I saw her, sitting alone outside a cafe. The woman who used to be the center of every event was now just another face in the crowd. She looked up and met my eyes. For a second I wondered, would she say something? Would she apologize? Admit she was wrong? She didn't. She just lifted her coffee cup, gave me a weak smile, and looked away. Because in her mind, Laura Harrier never lost. She just moved on. And I had already wasted too much of my life trying to make her notice me. So I turned and walked away, this time for good. It took a long time to stop carrying her voice in my head, that voice that always said I wasn't good enough. But here's the truth about healing. It doesn't happen all at once. It comes in small moments, when you laugh at something silly and realize you're not trying to please anyone. When you book a trip just because you want to. When you look in the mirror and finally see yourself. I didn't win by destroying my mother. I won because I created something better. Something true. Something that belonged to me. I never looked back. Because the best kind of revenge is living a life they can't ruin. Betrayal shows up in different ways. Sometimes it's loud and clear. Other times, it hides in the little cracks of the people we love. But the real question isn't just if you've been betrayed. It's what you do after. So tell me, if someone tried to erase you from their life, stole from you, rewrote your story without asking, would you fight back? Or would you walk away and build something better? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. I can still remember the feeling of that envelope in my hand. It wasn't heavy, but somehow it felt like it was pulling me down. Just holding it made everything around me feel heavier, like the air had suddenly gotten thicker and harder to breathe. I looked up at my mom, Samantha. She stood there with her arms crossed, and that same smirk she always had, the kind that made her look like she had just done something clever. Behind her, my brother Nathan was already halfway down the driveway, starting the engine of his brand new Range Rover. That car was his birthday gift. Actually, it was his second one because the first one had been the wrong color and he didn't like it. And me?
I was turning 18 that day.
It was supposed to be a big deal, a major moment in life. The day you officially become an adult. I wasn't expecting a party or presents or even a birthday card. I had learned by now not to expect much from my family. But still, deep inside, a small part of me hoped for something. Maybe a kind word. A hug. Some little sign that I mattered, even just a little. But that's not what I got. Instead, my mom handed me a one-way bus ticket to Las Vegas. She said it like it was the best gift ever, like I'd just won a trip to somewhere amazing. You're legally an adult now, she said. Time to make your own way. I looked down at the ticket in my hand. The bus was scheduled to leave the next morning. No return ticket. No note. Nothing else. Just that thin piece of paper. My hands started shaking. Not exactly from fear, but from a horrible mix of shame and disbelief. My heart was beating so loud in my ears that I could barely think. I didn't know if I was going to cry or yell or just fall apart completely.
But I didn't do any of that.
I looked up at her again, slower this time. Her face still had that same cold, proud look. Arms crossed. Lips curved into that smug little smile. She actually looked pleased with herself. Just then, Nathan walked past the front door again and looked right at me. He didn't even try to hide his grin. Don't look so shocked, he laughed. At least you got something. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. What could I even say? That I had been secretly working late nights online just to save a bit of money? That I had applied to community colleges without telling anyone because I knew I couldn't count on them? I wanted to speak. I wanted to say something. Anything, but the words just wouldn't come. So I stood there, silent, holding a bus ticket that felt more like a goodbye than a birthday gift. I always knew they wouldn't be there for me. I grew up having birthdays where no one even remembered it was my special day. So when it happened again, I wasn't surprised. I just nodded. I don't even know why I did that. Maybe it was just habit. Maybe I was scared. Or maybe I didn't want to let them see how much it hurt. I didn't want to give them the joy of watching me fall apart. Thanks, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake, and that was the only small win I had in that moment. My mom, Samantha, raised her eyebrows like she expected more from me. You should be grateful, she said. That word, grateful, stuck in my chest like a heavy rock. Was I really supposed to feel thankful? Thankful that they were pushing me out of the house like I was garbage being dumped on the sidewalk? I turned around without saying anything else and walked up the stairs. My legs felt stiff, like they were moving on their own. When I stepped into my room, the one I had lived in since I was little, it didn't feel the same anymore. It looked smaller somehow. Colder. The posters I used to love now looked silly. The bedsheets I picked 3 years ago felt cheap and faded. I sat on the edge of my bed, still holding the bus ticket in my hand. The room was so quiet it was almost too loud. The only sound was the ticking of the small clock on my nightstand. Tick, 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 like it was counting down the seconds until I disappeared from this house, from this life. I stared at the wall for what felt like forever. My mind was racing with thoughts, but I also felt completely numb. Was I mad? Was I hurt? Maybe I was a little bit of everything. Mad, hurt, sad, and tired. Or maybe I had just reached a point where I was done feeling anything at all. Then, in that silence, something inside me changed. It wasn't like a big, dramatic moment. It was more like a quiet thread inside me finally snapping. I realized something important. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to ask them to care. I was going to leave. And they would never see me the same way again. The next morning, I sat on my bed and watched the sun rise through the old cracked blinds in my room, if I could even call it mine anymore. The sunlight came in like soft golden lines across the floor. It was peaceful, which didn't match how I felt inside. I hadn't slept at all. Not even for a minute. My suitcase was packed and waiting by the door. Just the basics, some clothes, my sketchbook, and my journal. I was ready to go. Ready to start a life that was mine alone. I stayed hidden behind my dresser for a while that morning. It was strange how calm I felt. All the sadness I'd carried inside me had burned away during the night, like a fire that had already gone out. What was left behind wasn't pain, it was something clearer. A kind of understanding. I wasn't expecting a big goodbye. No hugs. No, I'll miss you. And I was right, no one even checked to see if I had left yet. I walked down the stairs slowly and quietly. My mom, Samantha, was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone and sipping black coffee like it was just another normal day. She didn't even lift her eyes to look at me. "Bus leaves at 11, she muttered without emotion. "I know," I said softly. Still, she didn't look at me. I guess if she did, it would feel too real. Like she'd have to admit I was actually leaving. My dad, Aaron, wasn't there either. He had left early for work, like he always did when things felt tense at home. That was his way of dealing with uncomfortable moments. Just disappear during the hard parts and come back when everything was calm again. I used to hate it, but now I just accepted it. That's who he was. And Nathan? He was outside in the driveway, happily polishing his shiny Range Rover. The same car they had surprised him with 3 years ago. Red leather seats, fancy wheels, everything he wanted. I still remember how they all laughed and cheered that day. Samantha even cried happy tears while filming him rev the engine. I don't think she's ever cried for me. Not when I brought home awards from school. Not when I came home in tears because Nathan had told his friends to make fun of me. Not even when I broke my wrist falling off my bike at 12 years old and had to walk myself to urgent care. Samantha was always good at staying distant. She called it tough love. I called it not being there. Growing up in that house felt like being a ghost, alive, but invisible. I followed the rules. I stayed quiet. I never caused trouble. And still, I felt like I didn't exist to them. Nathan was everything to them. Loud, confident, athletic. He didn't need to ask for attention. He just took it. And they gave it freely, like he was the best thing that ever happened to them. And me? I learned how to stay small. How to read their moods. How to avoid arguments and hide my feelings. But I was never clueless. I saw how Samantha looked at Nathan with pride, like he was proof she'd done something right. And how she looked at me like I was a mistake she still hadn't figured out. I stopped needing their approval a long time ago. Long before my 19th birthday. I had been saving up money from small art jobs I did online. I even opened a secret account. I had already applied for online classes too. I wasn't just leaving. I was starting something of my own. I had already started working on small jobs online, meeting people and building connections. I didn't sit around waiting for someone to rescue me. Deep down, I knew no one was coming to save me. Still, I hoped for something from my family, not love exactly, but at least a little recognition. I wanted them to see me, to know I was there, that I wasn't just someone hiding in the background while Nathan got all the attention. But I didn't get any of that. Instead, I got a bus ticket in silence. So, I left. I didn't shout or slam doors. I didn't give a speech. I just took a deep breath, gave one last look at the house I used to call home, and walked away. When the bus finally pulled off from the curb, something inside me whispered, "It's your turn now." The Greyhound bus smelled like old seats and cheap coffee. I sat by the window, holding my backpack tight against my chest, pretending I was someone else, in a different life. The ticket was crumpled up in my hoodie pocket, but I didn't need to check it. I already knew where I was going, Las Vegas. A city I had never seen. A place where I had no friends, no family, and no real plan. Just a hope that things could be better. I didn't cry. Not on the ride.
Not when I saw the city lights.
Not even when I stepped off the bus and realized no one was there waiting for me. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. There's a quiet kind of pain that comes when you finally accept that your family never really cared to know you. It's not sharp. It doesn't make you scream. It's more like a dull bruise. One you forget about until something touches it again. It would hit me at random moments, like when I saw someone my age getting hugged by their parents or FaceTiming their mom. Sometimes I'd scroll through social media and see happy family pictures and wonder what it felt like to be truly wanted. I found a small room above a bakery to rent. The woman who owned the place, Janet, didn't ask many questions when I paid up front for 2 weeks. I didn't have a lot, but I had just enough, thanks to some freelance design jobs I had landed online. I designed logos, flyers, album covers. It wasn't exciting, but it helped me survive. Then I met Rachel. She was one of my clients. She ran a tech company in Las Vegas. She liked how I worked and once told me I had an old soul. When I emailed her about my situation, she replied within minutes. "Meet me
Tomorrow.
11 a.m. My office. Where confidence." So I did. Rachel was nothing like Samantha. She was warm but strong, honest and focused. She didn't baby me, but she saw me.
Really saw me.
Within a week, I was working part-time on her startup's branding. She even arranged for a driver to pick me up for meetings until I could afford my own ride. It felt unreal, like someone had finally opened a door I had been knocking on my whole life. I had just started to feel safe again when they reached out. Nathan texted me first. Of course, he didn't call. He never did. "Dinner Thursday. Everyone's home. You should come. Mom said so." Mom said so. Like that was supposed to mean something after everything. I stared at the message for a long time. My heart wasn't racing because I was scared. It was racing because I was angry. Not because I needed them, but because I knew they still believed I did. Did they really think I'd come running back, desperate for their approval? That I'd show up sad and lost, hoping they'd take me in again? That's when the idea came to me. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to yell or cry or make a big scene. That's not who I am. But I did want them to see me, not to beg for attention, but to remind them exactly what they threw away. I wanted to be like a mirror, showing them the truth they ignored. I opened Rachel's contact in my phone and sent her a message. "Do you think your driver could help me make an impression Thursday night?" She replied in seconds. "Limo or something bold." A smile spread across my face for the first time in days. "Both," I texted back. That's when the plan really started to come together. I wouldn't show up for dinner looking like someone who had been cast aside. I would walk in with my head held high, stepping out of a car that didn't shout money, but confidence. Freedom.
Power.
I wasn't going to look like someone they had sent away with nothing. I was going to look like someone who had found everything on her own. Thursday crept up slowly, like a storm you can feel in your bones even before the sky changes. My stomach was tight as I opened my small closet, looking through the few clothes I had brought with me. None of them felt right. None of them said what I wanted to say. So I went shopping. Not to a big fancy store filled with brand names. I didn't need that. I found a small local boutique, hidden between a flower shop and a bookstore. The owner, a sweet older woman named Christina, welcomed me like I was her own granddaughter visiting from college. "I need something for family dinner," I told her. She didn't ask questions. She looked me over and said, "You want them to feel what they lost." "Exactly," I nodded. We picked out a black jumpsuit. It had a fitted shape and an open back. Simple, bold, and elegant. We added small gold earrings and nude heels, just enough to stand out, without trying too hard. I didn't want to look rich. I wanted to look like someone they couldn't touch. Someone they could never break again. And when I got back to my room, I was ready. I laid everything out on the bed and just stared at it. It was strange how clothes could carry so much meaning. This wasn't just a black jumpsuit. It felt like armor. It wasn't just something to wear. It was a message. On Thursday afternoon, Rachel's driver arrived right on time. The car parked in front of the bakery. It wasn't just any car. It was a sleek, dark gray limo with tinted windows. It wasn't flashy, but it definitely stood out. It looked strong, powerful. Janet, the bakery owner, peeked out from her window and gave me a small nod. I waved back, then stepped into the car. My heart was beating fast in my chest. Inside, the limo smelled like leather mixed with a light floral scent. Soft music played from speakers I couldn't even see. I leaned back in the seat, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "You're not going there to prove anything. You're just reminding them of what they lost." As the limo drove through my old neighborhood, everything looked the same: the streets, the houses, even the cracks in the sidewalks. But I didn't feel the same. I didn't sink down in my seat. I didn't practice what to say in my head. I didn't wonder if they would like how I looked. I didn't care anymore. Then I saw the house. White walls. Perfectly trimmed bushes. Nathan's shiny car parked in the same spot in the driveway, still looking brand new. Like it had never moved. I turned to the driver and asked, "Can you give me 5 minutes before opening the door?" He nodded. I looked into the small mirror one last time. My makeup was soft but carefully done. My eyes looked sharper than usual, focused. My lips were painted deep red, curved into a calm, quiet smile. I wasn't scared. I was completely ready. I grabbed my phone and texted Nathan, "Be there in 6." He replied with a thumbs up.
Of course, he did.
That was so like him. I pictured them inside. Samantha, probably complaining that the dinner rolls weren't warm enough. Aaron, sitting in the corner pretending to read something on his phone, avoiding eye contact. Nathan, acting like the center of the universe, like always. I wondered for a second if they had even set a place for me at the table.
Too late now.
The limo slowed and came to a smooth stop. I heard the soft crunch of gravel under the tires. The air felt different, like something big was about to happen. The driver stepped out, walked around the car, and opened the door. It was time. I took one last deep breath, the kind that makes your back stand tall and helps your heart calm down. Then I stepped out of the limo. And for the first time in my life, they really looked at me. Not a quick glance. Not like I was in the background. They really saw me. Their faces froze. Nathan's smirk disappeared. Samantha's eyes narrowed, like she was trying to figure me out. Aaron's face didn't show much, but he looked unsure. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there for a moment. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't shaking. I was calm and steady. And in that moment, I wasn't their daughter. I wasn't the extra in their perfect little family story. I was the surprise they never expected. The one thing they didn't see coming. The front yard went completely silent. Nathan spoke first. "Well, someone's trying hard tonight," he said with a little laugh. His voice had that usual teasing tone, but this time, something felt different. There was a little confusion in his eyes, maybe even a bit of worry. Like, he wasn't sure if he should make fun of me or take me seriously. Samantha stepped closer. She looked me up and down slowly, crossing her arms in front of her like she was getting ready to fight. Her lips were pressed in that tight line I knew too well. That look she always gave me when she disapproved. "You came in a limo?" she asked. Her voice was sharp, almost like she was trying to make fun of me. Where'd you get the money for that? I gave a small smile, not too big, not smug. Just enough to let her know I heard her, but wasn't going to give her an answer. Behind her, Aaron stood near the doorway. His eyes moved from person to person, but he didn't say a word. He looked like he was watching a movie, not his own family. I didn't come to impress you, I said finally. My voice was calm, steady. I came to show you what you gave up. Nathan made a noise like he was going to laugh, but no one laughed with him. Even he could feel it now. Something was different. We stood there for a moment, me, in heels, standing on their clean driveway. And them, watching like I had grown wings overnight. Dinner's getting cold, Samantha muttered, turning around toward the house. Well, if you're coming in, come in. I didn't move. I stayed still, letting her walk inside without me. Nathan followed her, mumbling something I didn't catch. Aaron stood there a second longer, then gave me a small nod. It wasn't much, but it felt like the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from him. Then he went inside too. I stayed outside for a few more seconds, letting the silence settle around me. I could have left right then, got back into the limo, and disappeared all over again. But I didn't come this far just to make an entrance. I came for something more. I came for closure. So I walked inside. The dining table was set perfectly, just like always. Every plate lined up, napkins folded neatly, a bottle of wine on the table even though Nathan wasn't old enough to drink, and a roast in the center that smelled too good to be homemade. I guessed it was store-bought. Samantha had never been much of a cook. Everyone was already sitting down. No one said a prayer. No one asked how I was doing. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. So, what? You're rich now? I looked straight at him, really looked. For the first time, he didn't look strong or impressive. He looked small, still stuck in that house, still living for their approval like it was the only thing that mattered. He was still smug, but now I could see it was empty. No, I said calmly, but I'm free, and I'm doing better without you. Samantha let out a laugh, sharp and cold. Oh, please. Don't act like we never gave you anything. I tilted my head slightly. You're right. You did give me something valuable. She blinked, confused. What? I leaned forward, resting my elbows gently on the table. A one-way bus ticket. And just like that, the room went quiet again. But this time, the silence was louder, heavier. Because they realized I wasn't there to beg for anything. I wasn't there to brag either. I was there to draw a line. To show them, clearly, that I wasn't the invisible girl anymore. The one who sat quietly at the edge of the table, forgotten. I wasn't the backup child or the disappointment in the family. I was done with all of that. I stood up slowly, brushing off my black jumpsuit like I was dusting off years of being ignored. I don't need this dinner. I don't need this house. And I don't need your love, I said clearly. Then I added, softly but with strength that filled the whole room, I don't need you. The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire.
No one said anything.
Not Samantha. Not Nathan. Not even Aaron. I turned and walked to the door, the sound of my heels clicking on their shiny floor. I stepped back out into the night. The limo driver was already there. He opened the door without saying a word. I slid into the seat as the city lights sparkled outside the tinted windows. Just like that, I was gone. The ride back was quiet. But it wasn't an empty quiet. It felt earned. I leaned my head against the cool window, watching the lights blur into golden streaks as we drove through the city. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running away from something. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just at peace. I thought about that dinner.
About how none of them followed me.
About how not a single one of them tried to stop me. And that said everything. When I left, the thing that surprised me most was that it didn't hurt. There was no pain, no lump in my throat. Just a calm feeling inside, like I knew for sure I had made the right choice. They had never really seen me, not who I truly was, and maybe they never would. But now I understood something important. That was their loss, not mine. For years, I had made myself smaller just to fit into a version of me that they wanted, quieter, easier, more pleasing. I thought if I tried hard enough, maybe I could earn their love. Like it was a prize I had to win. But love shouldn't be something you chase. Real love meets you where you are, as you are. I used to think that bus ticket they gave me was the cruelest thing they could have done.
But now?
I see it was the beginning of my real life. That ticket pushed me to start fresh, on my own terms. It helped me find out who I was without their opinions holding me back. I discovered how strong I could be, how capable, how brave, how much I had inside me that they never saw. I don't live above the bakery anymore. A month after that dinner, I got promoted at Rachel's startup. I became the creative lead. With the money I had saved, I moved into a small loft in the city. My own space, my own furniture, my own rules.
And you know what I did?
I framed that bus ticket, the original one to Las Vegas. I hung it near my front door. Every time I leave my apartment, I see it. It reminds me of where everything truly started. Do I talk to my family? Not really. Aaron sent a short message a few weeks later. It just said, "Hope you're doing well." I didn't reply. Nathan once tagged me in an Instagram story. It was some vague quote about family always coming back. I muted him after that. And Samantha? Nothing. Not a word. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I don't hate them. That would mean I'm still giving them a part of me. I've let go. I've stopped waiting for an apology that will never come. I've stopped hoping for closure from people who wouldn't understand what that even means. I gave myself closure. I built my own life, the one I deserve. And if you're reading this and wondering if you'll ever be strong enough to leave behind people who make you feel small, here's the truth. You already are. You don't need their permission to grow. You don't need their approval or their applause. You need you. That bus ticket wasn't a punishment. It was my freedom. And the limo? That wasn't revenge. It was a quiet, full-circle moment. Not to say, "Look at me now," but to finally say, "I see myself now." And that's what I needed most. No, I didn't get the car. I got something better. I got me. I got out. I made it. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong in your own family, like you were never good enough, always compared to others, or completely invisible, please remember, you're not alone. And more importantly, your story doesn't have to end the same way theirs did. Sometimes, the biggest blessings in life come disguised as rejection. Sometimes, when people push us away, they're actually giving us the space we need to grow into who we were always meant to be. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your pain. But you do owe yourself a fresh start. You deserve a life that feels good, not just one that looks good to others. And if you're holding on to your own kind of ticket, whatever that may be, a chance, an idea, a moment of change, just know it could be the thing that sets you free. It could be your way out of the pain, but also your way into something better. Into freedom. Into strength. Into peace. This isn't just my story. It could be yours too. And if it is, I hope you hold on to it, believe in it, and run with it.